All right, excellent. Welcome. Today is Monday, August 23rd. It is our first day of biology 430, anatomy and physiology, first semester. When you come on, as you see here, this will always be what things look like at the start of class. You will have a screen that shows all of the things we're going to be doing today and all of the upcoming events, and most importantly, all of the assignments that are going to be due. If we have a daily quiz, like we do indeed today, that quiz information will be here as a reminder, as well as the access code. So you always have to log on to the class first to get that access code before you're able to take those quizzes. And again, if you have not taken this attendance quiz, then you will be dropped from the class or you will not be able to add the class. So it is vitally, vitally important that you take that. It is in the quizzes tab in our Canvas site. So just pop over to that, take that one question quiz to be able to do that. The website has been up for a week now, so hopefully many of you got an opportunity to get on and look around, but we will briefly talk about some of the highlights of the things that and where you'll find the things that are going to be important for you. And then we're going to dive into our discussion of new material today, starting first with our anatomical terminology. And then we'll finish things up by discussing organs and organ systems. As you can see, there are a large number of activities that are due over the next couple of days. It's again one of the reasons why our website has been open for the past week. Even though you were at home, we are required to do a lab safety handout. This serves two purposes. This way, if I tell you to pat your head and rub your tummy and you poke yourself in the eye, you cannot sue the university. But also, one of the things that is, as of at least today, who knows as these things continue to change, different from the previous year, is that while this class is 100% online and 100% synchronous, there is an on-campus open lab on Fridays. So on Fridays, there is actually an opportunity for you to go into the classroom and hold the physical bones in your hand and look at the muscle models and pull out a microscope and look at microscope slides and do things like that. To participate in that, there are going to be three things that are going to be required. One, you have to fill out this lab safety form. And again, it's required for this class. If you don't fill it out properly, then you will not be allowed to stay in the class, but you have to have that form signed. Two, to be on campus, as you know, you must be vaccinated and have shown proof to the university. And three, you must wear a mask when you're in the classroom. But there is that opportunity. So that is the other reason why we need to fill out that lab safety form. For those of you who have not used Proctorio before, there is a Proctorio quiz. Make sure you read the syllabus and the Proctorio page before you take that. Also today after class, there will be a chemistry quiz that will become available, and that is going to be due at the beginning of class on Wednesday as well. Chemistry is a prerequisite for this class. I don't want to have to take the time to remind you what a covalent bond versus a hydrogen bond is, what an acid versus a base is, all of those types of things. So I will warn you, these chemistry quiz questions are not my questions. I went to one of the chemistry instructors on campus and I said to her, hey, give me 20 questions that you think a student who has successfully completed your class should know. And so she gave me these questions and I've posted them there. So this is not an indication of what my exams are going to be like, but this is a little bit of a carrot to encourage you to remember your chemistry to help you to be successful. Also, many of you have taken advantage of the opportunity to come and meet with me for 5 minutes for 5 points of extra credit. I will be available in office hours as a first come, first served basis for the next couple of days, and that is due by Wednesday. It will be the last day to have those 5-point opportunities as well. Next week, your first homework assignment is due. In your lab manuals, should look somewhat like this. The instructor edition is bound. The student edition is unbound. You may use sites like Chegg or things like that to get an online version of it. Just make sure you can download the pages, because one of the things that I love about this lab manual is that it is like a workbook. And at the end of each unit is a unit review. Yes, Stephanie, you had a question.
Could you show us that book again, please?
Yep. It's the Ammerman 3rd edition, Exploring Anatomy and Physiology in the Laboratory. It's got the picture of the woman with a little bit of her brain showing.
So should we get that now if we're on the wait list? You think?
No, well, no, I would encourage you not to purchase anything if you're on the wait list. While most instructors use the same resources, not every instructor uses the same resource, especially the lab manuals. So I would say over half of the labs, half of the instructors at AR use this lab manual. But if you bought it for me and didn't get in and then ended up in another class that uses a different lab manual, you're wasting your money. So you're not going to, if you are added later to this class, you will have additional time to complete these types of activities. So I would, unless you're independently wealthy and money means nothing to you, I wouldn't buy anything until you actually need it. You're officially in the class. Okay.
Professor, I have
Yes.
a question. Yeah, regarding the lab manual, so are there pages you need to complete online in order for you to see who turned it in? How does that work?
So what you are going to do is you are either going to physically do it by hand if you have the physical copy.
Yes, I do.
Okay, then you're going to physically do that. Then you're either going to scan them or you can take pictures of them with your phone and you are going to submit them online and I will show you where you submit that. Those
Perfect.
Okay, but yes, so you will be turning these in. You will be completing them and turning them in. Perfect. And what I like about it is not only is it a workbook, but there are two parts to the reviews. So with the review, there's a pre-lab at the beginning, there's the activities, which we'll be doing some of and not be doing some of. And then at the end of each unit is a review that has 2 parts. The first of those parts is a part that is called Check Your Recall. And this part is just basically regurgitation of information, right? It's labeling of things or stuff along those lines. Basically, it's just recall of the information. However, the second part of it is a check your understanding. And that check your understanding is more critical thinking type questions where you have to use the information that you've learned in this section to make some reasonable assumptions and expectations and come up with some critical thinking answers. I like this check your recall part a lot. And in fact, some of these questions are in your test banks for the exams as well. So those pages for both those parts are 29 through 36. For most homework assignments, you are going to be graded for completeness, right? I am looking for time and effort, right? You're not going to get penalized for getting something wrong because homework should be a learning experience, but I want time and effort. If a question says A or B and explain why, and you just say A, that's not showing time and effort. And you will not get credit for that. Certainly leaving a question blank will cause you to lose points. I want time and effort. And as long as you show me time and effort, you will get full credit for these homework assignments. One of our main resources is the Mastering A&P. If you have not purchased the bundles yet, or then you do still have a free 2-week access to the Mastering A&P through our Canvas site. So you can get on there and start using some of the resources. And this is, again, another carrot. It's just a little 4-point assignment to encourage you to get on there and look around and see what is available. Also, because we are fully online, we are going to be doing lab simulators, 2 primary ones. And the first one is Labster. These Labster activities can be accessed from our modules. And again, they're lab simulators. They're not great, but they're pretty good. And again, I'm looking for time and effort. So for full credit on them, you need to complete 100% of the activity and you must get it at least 80% correct. The good news is if you don't get it 80% correct, you can complete the activity again and improve your grade. And as long as you complete the entire activity and get 80% correct, you will get full credit for that. Lastly, there's some student info sheets, an opportunity to tell me a little bit about you. All of those are due Monday. And then the following Wednesday, We have our second lab manual unit that is due, our second labster that is due, and because it's, well, we have a holiday, so it's a week and a half before our first exam, we're going to have a practice lab exam so you can see what that's like and gauge how you're studying for the material at that time. So as you can see, things start out pretty light, but don't worry, we'll get busy as soon as the semester gets rolling. All right, so like I said, when you log on first time, this is what you will see. Any questions on that? All right, let's do a little bit of an introduction to what we're going to be doing. Let's do this first.
Professor, I have one more question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I never apologize for a question. I am a firm believer that the only stupid question is the question not asked. If you guys have a question, then I think it is vitally important to ask it. I think that if you've got a question, I guarantee someone else in the class has the same question. And again, you guys are spending good money to be here and understand this information. And if you're not understanding the information, then I'm not doing my job. So by all means, ask. So
Okay,
yes, go ahead.
For the photographic atlas,
Yes.
where can we find that one?
So great question. If you purchase the bundle, it comes with a photographic atlas, but again, and it's an okay photographic atlas, it's actually a pretty good one, but it's not required that you have that specific photographic atlas. The reason to have an atlas, and let me grab this one here, this is not the new one, but this will serve the point of what I'm trying to say. It doesn't matter what photographic atlas you have, the point of it is that, especially because we're going to be online, and unless you're able to go to the open lab, you're not going to have this opportunity. Even if you go to the open lab, you may only have a couple hours with the bones, for instance. So having a good atlas that has the pictures of the bones, shows the labels of the bone features, these are the things that are going to help you to be successful, right? Something that shows the muscles and things along those lines. This photographic atlas is going to be one of your main sources for preparing for the lab exams, because you're not going to have a chance to hold the models in your hand for very long, or the bones in your hand for very long. Having tools like that are going to be important. Now, the good news is some of that is on Mastering A&P. The Mastering A&P does have some of those resources, but also having a physical atlas of some site is something that can be very important as well.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, great questions. Any others?
Yes, please. Sorry, regarding for the meeting with you, I think I emailed you about it as well. It wasn't letting me schedule a meeting for some reason.
So last week I had some, so in the Student Connect, I had some 5 for 5 meetings blocked out so that people could go and select them.
Okay.
Those filled up, so those were no longer available. And as I said in the email that I sent out, I'm not going to do that for this week. So instead, during my office hours, which in this case will be the hour and change after class, you'll have the opportunity to just come to my office hour, and we will do it that way. So rather than formally assigning a time, like I did last week when we weren't really in school, so I didn't want to just be sitting, on the computer with, with nobody showing up. I wanted to have more assigned things. This will just be, you'll be able to come during my office hours, go to the link in my office hours, not using the Student Connect. And then I'll be able to do one-on-one. I'll have a waiting room set up, and so I'll do one-on-one meetings with students that way.
Perfect. Okay,
That's
I'll
what
do
we'll
that.
be doing this week. So you don't have to officially sign up for anything this week. You just need to come to one of my office hours and have that meeting with me.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions? That's actually a great lead into where we are going next. Here is what your homepage looks like. And as I was just talking here, as you can see, are my office hours and my Zoom room. Although you can also just click the link that is right here, and this link will take you to my Zoom office. And so like you see right after class today for the hour after class. And if enough students show up, I'll stay extra today because it's the first day of class, to give people the opportunity that want to get those 5 points of extra credit to be able to do that. So you have that here. So that's easy and on the front page. All of your tabs and everything are over here. This is where it's going to get you to the things that you need to know. Your announcements are located here. Hopefully you have it set up so that you get these emailed to you, because as things get updated, we have that here. And so here are our announcements. And if you've missed any of those, you have the opportunity to come here, including probably the most important one, this vaccination requirement that reminds you that not only do you need a vaccination to be a student on campus, but if you get vaccinated, they give you $200. So make sure you look at that. Pages is where you find some of our important information. This is obviously where our home page is, but when you go here, if for those of you who have not taken the Proctorio quiz yet, this is where your Proctorio protocols are located. So make sure you come here and read this. Also, there are the open lab that I just talked about on Fridays. There's information for that. For those of you who cannot be on campus, the open lab is also going to be available on Zoom. So you can Zoom into the meeting. Obviously, you don't get to hold the bones in your hands. And I'm not sure exactly how Jeff is going to juggle being able to speak to people on Zoom and be able to answer questions of people in the classroom. I guess it'll depend a lot on how many people are in the classroom at the time when that is going on. But it is a good way to get some additional information and some additional help for that as well. As well as the other important resource that is here, and that is our Science Success Center. For those of you who are not familiar with the Science Success Center, the Science Success Center is a project on campus based on a program that was completed at or started initially at a Minnesota medical school. One of the things that this medical school was having a problem with is their first year students, they were having about a 50% attrition rate. About 1 out of every 2 med students was failing their first year, and they couldn't figure out why. What they, long story short, figured out is that the problem is med students are smart. And that's why they were failing. Because we all know those really smart students who in high school sat in the back of the class and napped or read a book and still aced all the exams. They never had to crack a book in middle school. They never had to crack a book in high school. And many of them barely had to crack a book in college to get their bachelor's degree. And that's the problem. They never learned good study habits. They never learned how to read a textbook or how to take notes because they'd never had to do that before. And so what they set up was this program that all first year students had to take to help them to be successful. Well, we've taken that and modified it for sciences. It's an 8-week program where you meet for 30 minutes a week with someone, all via Zoom right now. And it helps you with your study skills. It helps you, and it's all directly related to this class. So when you're reading a chapter in this class. When you're doing a concept map, you're doing a concept map on the information on this class. I do not give outside extra credit assignments. If you bomb the first test and you come to me asking for an extra credit assignment and I give you that extra credit assignment, you're going to be working on that extra credit assignment instead of studying for the second exam. And if you don't study for the second exam, you're going to bomb that as well. And then you're going to need more extra credit. And then you're going to bomb the next test. And suddenly it's independent study. And that's not what I want. There are extra credit opportunities in the class. There are things that I will do to help you to be successful in this class, but I don't give outside extra credit opportunities, except for these 2 things that I've just talked about. If you complete the Science Success Center, you will get 15 points of extra credit. If you go to the open lab, either virtually or in person, for every hour you go to the open lab, you'll get 1 point of extra credit, up to a total of 15.
I have a question.
Yep, go ahead.
So do you keep track of it, or are we supposed to like log it and then send it to you?
Great question. So for the Science Success Center, it's a class, I think it's a half-unit class you have to sign up for, and they send me the information when you're done. For the open lab, what you're going to do, whether you're virtual or whether you're in person, you will sign in with Jeff. Jeff Chingaris is our instructional assistant, and he's the one that runs the open lab program. You will check in with him. When you leave, you will check out with him as well. And so he's the one who keeps track of the numbers. And it is important to check in and check out. Obviously, if you don't check in, you don't get credit for the time that you're there. If you don't check out, then what happens is you default to 1 hour. So if you spend 7 hours there, but you forget to check out, you're only getting credit for 1. So it is important to check in and out with Jeff Chingaris. And again, that information is there on the page as well. All right. So those, and so again, do the Open Lab, do the Science Success Center. Either of them can get you up to a total of 15 points of extra credit. I encourage you to do both, but you can't double up on the extra credit. You'll only get 15 total, but doing both will give you far more points than 15 on the exams. Yes, Amanda.
I was wondering for the Science Success Center, can that be virtual as well? Or is that only in person?
My understanding is that it is only virtual.
Oh, okay, good.
So yeah, so it is only virtual. That is correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
And can I clarify something?
Yep.
You said you only get 15 points of extra credit. So if we did both, we wouldn't get 30. It would only be 15.
Correct.
Okay,
But
thank you.
here's the thing that I will tell you, that we are going to finish this class with somewhere close to 1,300 points. So 15 shouldn't make or break your grade. Now, are there some students who occasionally get close to 15 points short? Yes, unfortunately, that does happen sometimes. But the skills that you gain by doing the Science Success Center, the knowledge you gain by doing the Open Lab, you're going to get far more than 15 points better on your exams by doing those things. So yes, there's the tiny carrot of the extra credit, but really you should do it because it's going to help you to be successful in the class and do much better on the exams than you would without them. All right, but again, I understand, I appreciate the importance of carrots. So yes, that 15-point carrot is there to help you to be successful.
For the Open Lab, I'm just a little bit confused. What time exactly does it start on Fridays, I believe? How does that work?
So on Friday on campus, I think it's 10:30 to 8:30. Yeah. So either online, you will come here and click on this Zoom link.
Okay.
At 10:30 in the morning on Friday, and you'll be there that way. Or you can go on campus, and on campus, it's going to be in either classroom 411 or 418. Those are the two normal anatomy and physiology classrooms. I think you enter through 418, and then you can go into either classroom. Ours, as 430, would be the 411 class, but you would go and enter at 418, and he's got signs posted outside and everything else, and you could be there as well. And again, you don't have to be there when it opens. You don't have to stay the whole time. If you can only go for an hour of that or an hour and a half of that, it's fine, and it's all cumulative.
And if it's virtual, I just tell him, hey, I'm here. And then
yes, so yeah, when you log on, you will tell him that you're there, and he will virtually check you in.
Perfect. Okay.
And check you out as well.
I have a question.
Yes.
With the Science Success Center, how would you go about enrolling? Is that through the same as enrolling in a class, or is there a specific one that you need us to take?
So that is an excellent question that I do not know the answer to, but luckily here's the best way to do that. So the best way, so this was in our lecture we'll talk about today. This is open now, it's available. It looks like the best thing to do is to email ssc@arc.losrios.edu. And that will set up the appointment where you're able to get the time and get that set up.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep. And I think, so this was part from our lecture, but I think if we go back, we cheat and go back to the classroom. And again, in the pages. I think there might be a direct link there as well. Yeah, so there's the link there. And then here's the link to the Science Success Center, and there's the email address. So you can do that from the pages as well.
That's under pages, you said, yeah?
Yep, that is under pages. And I think it's also, there's a link to it in our modules. So I'll show you that when we get there as well. There you go. Okay, excellent. Oh, and that's a great question. If you've done the Science, I know it wasn't a question, but it brings up a good point. If you have done the Science Success Center before, I believe you can do it up to a total of 3 times. So they have enough different modules where you can do different modules and still benefit from it, even if you have completed it before. So that is something that can be done again. So that is good. All right, here is our syllabus. Here is a link to download our syllabus if you require that information. If you're having trouble sleeping at night, I encourage you to read our student learning outcomes of what the goal is for this class. But what I want to really talk about is a couple of the other things that are on here. First, of course, is the materials that you need. As I mentioned, and I've sent several emails, there's basically 3 things you must have in this class. You must have a textbook. I don't care what textbook it is. We will be using the Merib 11th edition of Human Anatomy and Physiology. But if you started this class at Tech City and you have the Tutora book or something like that, that's fine. You need a textbook because it is an important resource to help you to be successful. But I'm not going to say go to page 57 and answer the 4 questions that are on that page. That is not what I'm going to be doing, but it is important to have a resource. Now, the reason I encourage you to have our textbook is because of people's learning styles. Different textbooks are written by different authors. So a process that in our textbook is described in 7 steps, in a different textbook may be described in 8 steps. And so if I describe something in 7 steps in class, and then you go to your textbook and read it in 8, for some people that can be confusing. And then what happens when you take the test? If I described it in 7 steps and you described it in 8, are you going to lose points? Do I care whether you use 7 steps or 8 steps? Yes. I'll wait. If you don't want to speak out loud, type it in the window. No, I do not care how many steps. You could describe it in 47 steps. What I care about is the information. As long as you are giving me the information and giving me the details, I don't care about the number of steps. All right, I just want the information. So again, any textbook is fine, but you need a textbook. You must have the lab manual that I showed you because there are homework assignments that are coming out of that. The nice thing about the lab manual bundle is that the lab manual bundle comes with a histology atlas. One of the things that we are going to do a lot of in this class is microscope work. Yes, I know you do not have a microscope at home, but we do have plenty of online slides and resources that we can use like that. And it is going to be important for you to know, for instance, what a ciliated pseudostratified columnar epithelial tissue is. Now, of course, there's the almighty Google, and I could go to the almighty Google and I could type in ciliated pseudostratified columnar epithelial tissues, and I'm going to get a lot of pictures of ciliated pseudostratified columnar epithelial tissues. However, if I do a search for ciliated pseudostratified columnar epithelial tissues, are all the pictures that Google brings up going to be ciliated pseudostratified columnar epithelial tissues? No, right?
No.
Again, it's the same problem I have with everything else. First thing I get up in the morning is I log on to Google, I type in Justin Bieber shirtless, right, to see what new pictures are posted on there. And I get plenty of those, but I also get plenty of other things that aren't. The good news is I know what Justin Bieber looks like, so I can ignore the ones that aren't really him that come up. And that's the problem. If you don't know what a ciliated pseudostratified columnar epithelial tissue is, you don't know which pictures are right and which pictures are wrong. But if you have a good histology atlas, you can see what a really nice example is and get an idea and an understanding of what that tissue is, so that then when you do a Google search to see all the different stains and all the different magnifications and all the different planes of section, you can tell what is a ciliated pseudostratified columnar epithelial tissue and what isn't. So again, there aren't any homework assignments in this photographic atlas of histology, but it is an important resource that is going to help you to be successful. All right, this has homework assignments. You must have this. You must have a textbook of some site. You must have that. And the other thing that you must have, the third thing that you must have, is the modified mastering A&P. Now, this is available. If you purchase the bundle, you get access to the mastering A&P, and you actually get access to the electronic version of the textbook, which is a very, very powerful tool that I encourage you to take advantage of. There are going to be graded assignments in the Mastering A&P site, online resource. So you must have that. Now, if you want to, you can purchase this. Like I said, we have free 2-week. Agnestina, give me a second. I just want to finish this and I'll answer your question. Everybody has a free 2-week access to this modified Mastering A&P right now, and that includes access to the e-text. So if you just want to purchase that, after that, you can have, that gives you an electronic version of the textbook, that gives you your modified Mastering A&P, and then all you need is the lab manual. So that is one way that you can do that if you like. Now, yes, go ahead.
Are we buying these like bundles together? And if so, where? Or are these things we have to buy individually?
So these bundles, so there are, so you go to the bookstore's link, and the bookstore links to, can't remember the name of the site. It's something with an F, floss or something. I don't remember.
Folate or
Folate,
something
there you
like
go.
that.
Folate, there you go. It's Folate. Absolutely. When you go there, you will see 2 textbook bundles that you can choose for. All of them have all of the same resources. The only difference is one of them has both a physical book and access to the e-text. Whereas the second one, which is I think called the e-book bundle, just the e-text. So they have all the other resources. They have the photographic atlas, which would be great for the bones and for the muscles and things along those lines. It has an A&P applications manual, which is really just a free book they threw into the bundle for us. There aren't any assignments, but for those of you that, oh yeah, and if you're physically on the bookstore, you can go to on campus, you can go to the bookstore as well. I keep forgetting it's open. If you like the clinical aspect of all of this, the A&P applications has a bunch of really great clinical explanations and clinical examples to help you to understand this material. So it's a great study tool. Again, there's not going to be any assignments in it, but they threw it in the bundle for free. And so you can purchase it that way. So there's one of 2 bundles that you select from that. And then the second thing that you will buy is there is the lab manual bundle with the Ammerman book and the atlas. So that is definitely one of the ways that you can get it, but you can piecemeal this however you want. As long as you have those 3 things, a textbook, the modified Mastering A&P access, and the lab manual, then that is everything that you will physically need to be able to answer, to ask all of the questions. You had to complete all the assignments, but are there other resources that can help you to be successful? Yes, absolutely. All right, Amanda, I think you were next.
Yes, I also, but I got it through the My Lab and Mastering tab on the Canvas,
Yeah.
which it says Open Lab and Mastering, and it automatically takes you to Pearson, and you can choose your
Right.
package, and you can do it for the 2-year or 24 months. So you have it for your next class. It comes with the e-text and everything, and you can do it without the e-text as well.
So you're right. That comes with the e-text and with the Mastering A&P.
And then I bought the lab manual separately on Chegg. So if anyone's confused, because I know I was really confused about which route to go. So
Okay.
that's also one.
The one thing that I would warn you about the Chegg, and again, it is a perfectly acceptable
Oh, is it
way.
downloadable?
Exactly. But there are different levels, I think, of the ways that you can check it out. And you just want to make sure you can either write on the pages and print them. It's really about printing them. You want to make sure you have the ability to print the pages so that you're able to turn them in. So that's the only thing
Yeah,
you
I'll
have to
find
be
that
careful about that with those types of online sites. All right. So yes, absolutely. That is probably the cheapest way to do that. But the one thing you have to worry about the way you did that is all of those study resources that you have are things that you don't have. But Mastering A&P has some of those, and there are other, good websites and other ways that you can scrounge that stuff around. So if you like having it all physically in front of you, the bundles are a great way. If you want to piecemeal it, that's fine as well. Stephanie.
I think you kind of answered my question. So you said we need the book and the lab manual. And when you refer to A&P Mastering, that's the site Amanda just talked about, right?
And I will show that to you in just a minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't want to get confused.
No problem. I like I said, I appreciate you asking the question. We will get to that though.
Thank you.
Yes. Ava, you had a question as well?
Yes. So I was wondering if you're comfortable with me putting my number in the side so I can make like a group study chat or something if anyone wants to study, really. I know we
So,
can't see the people on
I will
campus.
show you a place where you can do that.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I will show you a place where you can do that. So you don't have to do that here. I'll show you a place
Okay.
where you can easily do that. All right. So course materials, I know that's one of the big questions that people have. Like I said, this is a lab and lecture class, so we have both of those materials, but again, being online, things are a little bit different that way. This is a synchronous class. Attendance is expected. Often there will be quizzes either at the very beginning of class or the very end of class to encourage you to be here on time, to make sure that you are staying for the entire lecture. There are group activities that you will be doing in class time. All the exams are during class time. So again, I know this is not run like a normal online class, but this is not a class that is normally online. Yeah, last semester I had a student who set up a Discord site too. That's another great way to do it as well. I didn't bother setting up Discord, but I do have a discussion board set up for you where you guys can meet as well. All right, so there's all of that, and there's a participation grade. Not only will you be missing out on points by not being here and doing the activities, but you will lose points by if you're continually not here or showing up late or things along those lines. That can be an issue as well, and you could lose participation points. Which reminds me, as I look at the participants, there are a few more. If you did not take the attendance quiz, make sure you go do that, or you will be dropped from the site. From the class. The access code for that is NOS, so please make sure you do that. Materials are one of the things that people care about. Course evaluation is the other big thing that people care about, how you're going to get your grade in this class. And I am very excited to see that you guys are looking to already make groups and work together, because that is one of the keys, one of the things that I like about this class. I like a lot of things about this class. One of the things I like about this class is hard. Not because I make it hard, it's just because there's a lot of material to learn in a very small period of time. And as an instructor, that's awesome, because then I don't have to be tricky. I can be very straightforward. I can tell you X, Y, and Z is going to be on the exam, because I know you're going to need to use a lot of time and effort to learn X, Y, and Z. The other important thing about this class is all about points, right? And points are like golf strokes, right? Anyone here play golf before? This is the part where you speak out loud.
Just Top Golf.
No, okay, yeah, okay, Top Golf. Okay, there you go. Someone said no. A lot of no's. I did see one or two yeses. Excellent. But most of you have at least heard of golf, right?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. When Tiger Woods, when he's not busy abusing women and drugs, if he hits that 300-yard drive, how many strokes does that count as?
One.
When he hits a 2-inch putt, how many strokes does that count as?
One.
In golf, strokes are strokes are strokes. In this class, points are points are points. 1 point on a homework assignment counts the same as 1 point on a labster, counts the same as 1 point on the lab exam, and 1 point on the final. Points are points are points. And your goal is to maximize your points. And your points don't affect anybody else's. So if every single person in this class gets 90% of the points or more, then every single person in this class is going to get an A. So it benefits you to take advantage of the resources that are available to you, right? And these are the resources that are available to you. The other people in the class. I love that someone's already set up a Discord site. I've got a discussion board set up where if you want to try to get together and meet with people or put together contact information or things along those lines, you have the opportunity to do that. And notice I'm in these squares as well, right? Our goal here is to work together to help you all to be successful. And working together is a great way to do that, right? One of the best ways to learn something is to teach it to somebody else. If you can describe something out loud, you own that process, right? First, I make one bunny ear, then I make a second bunny ear, The first bunny ear goes around the second bunny ear through the bunny hole, pull it tight, right? I just described in my own words the process of how you tie a shoe. And doing that shows that I understand that process. If you can explain a process out loud in your own words, you own that process. So if you have a dog at home, right, a dog will stare at you forever while you talk to them. If you have a slow moving significant other, you can talk to them about that. But one of the best things about this right here is not only do you have somebody else there who's motivated to listen, but they can help you. Oh, you forgot this step, or you switch those two steps around. So I strongly, strongly encourage you guys to work together to be successful in this class. Right? And the great things about it with Zoom, with all the other resources, you can do that virtually. You can meet outside at different locations. You can meet at the open labs, right? Or you can even do it asynchronously, like things with Discord or the discussion boards. So take advantage of the resources that are available for you so you can maximize your points in this class, because that is what this class is about. It's about points. There are lab and lecture exams. There are quizzes. Some, like today's attendance quiz, was announced. Some will not be announced. So it is important to always be here and be here on time. And like I said, homework assignments. Most homework is basically what I think of as directed studying. It's my way of saying, look, this stuff is important, study this. And like I said, as long as you put time into it, time and effort into it, you're going to get full credit. You're basically getting free points for studying. So take advantage of that. All right. And like I said, we can set it up on other ways as well. Let's do that as well. So make sure you do that. Homework assignments are due at the beginning of class. We start at 8 o'clock in the morning, so make sure it is turned in by 8 o'clock. And again, one of the things that you do not want to do is wait till 7:58 when you log on in the morning to upload your homework. Because if there's a problem downloading it or getting it to upload to the system and it's late and shows up at 8:02, then it's late. Now, the good news is you can turn in late assignments, but late assignments are only worth half credit. All right, and in fact, you can turn in late assignments up to 1 week late. But just make sure that you turn them in on time because you don't want to give away those free points. There is, as I mentioned, a participation grade. This participation grade is not extra credit. It is an assignment for being here and being active. I would prefer active, meaning that you be vocal, answer questions, ask questions, do all those things. I appreciate that some of you are not as comfortable speaking out loud, and that's the nice thing about this format. You can always just type your question into the chat box if you don't want to speak out loud as well. But participation also means being here on time, being active in the learning process, working in your groups, doing things along those lines. As long as you do those things that help you to be successful, you will get your full points for that. Something else that is important are the exams. I curve the exams. Now, in this fashion, I don't mean a curve by a stereotypical curve where we have the same number of A's and the same number of F's and the same number of B's and the same number of D's. What I mean is whatever the top grade in the class is, I curve based on those grades. So I do curve it to bring the grades up based on how successful you guys are as a group on that. So I curve all of the exams that way.
I have a question.
Yes.
So when you grade an exam and it's in the grade book and we see it, will that be our curved score, or is
Yes.
it our, okay.
You will see the curved score. And again, it's simple math. If, for instance, let's say you get a 52 out of 65 on your first lab exam, right? What percentage is that? Come on, y'all have smartphones sitting in front of you. Someone tell me what that percentage is.
80.
Is it really? Am I that good? That's depressing. Okay, hold on. I don't like that. Let's make it 51. What's 51 then?
78.
Okay, I like that better. Excellent. 78%. Perfect. Now, As I mentioned, I typically curve it towards what the top score is in the class. So let's say the top score in the class was a 60. So what I do is I curve it out of 60 now instead. Obviously, the person who had the top score is going to get 100%. But are they the only one that benefited from that? No, because now you've got a 51 out of 60 instead of a 51 out of 65. And what's your percentage there? 85, excellent. So everybody benefits from the curve. Right? I curved the grades. Both lab and lecture exams are curved. Stop it. That's what I'm doing. And you also have the opportunity to replace your lowest lecture score with the final. So let's say you take your first exam and your first exam is a 79. Weren't quite sure what to expect from that, so you didn't know what happened. Bring that up to an 85 for the second, you get an 81 on the third. And then right before the fourth exam, grandma got married in Vegas. And you didn't really have the opportunity to study so well, and you totally bombed it. Got a 59 on that. Came back and you rallied for the fifth exam, ended up with a nice solid 82. And those are your scores on the 5 lecture exams. Then you take your final exam. And on your final exam, you get a solid 85. That 85 counts as an exam on its own, but it also replaces your lowest lecture score. And now suddenly you just had 26 points added back into your grade. Yes, Sarah.
So do we get to like opt in or opt out of that, or is that something that's just going to automatically happen if we do better on the final?
It is something that is going to automatically happen if you do better on the final.
Okay.
Now, if let's say these were your 5 scores, right? We leave the 85 there. If you got a 77 on the final, I'm not going to replace your 79 with a 77 and take it away. So obviously, I'm only going to replace it if you improve it. And if you improve it with an 81, right, then when I replace this 79, you're only getting 2 more points. So again, it's going to depend on how you do. But what it does allow people to do, what often happens is things like grandmothers get married in Vegas or some other thing comes up and interferes and affects life and things that way. Or what often happens a lot is people don't appreciate the amount of work that is necessary in a class like this. And so a lot of people are not as successful on the first exam because they didn't know what to expect in a class like this. Or they do really poorly on the second exam because that's when we're going to be doing all the microscope stuff or something like that. So if you have that struggle, there is still time to learn and to improve. And that's really what I'm looking for, is for that ability for you to be able to learn and improve. Brianna.
So what happens if, say, we did 80s across the board on all of our regular exams, and then for some reason we got a 75 on that final, and I know it wouldn't replace one of our 80s, but what would happen in that case with that final exam? So would it just sit there, or
no, great question. The final exam counts as a grade on its own. It counts towards your grade. So if you got 95s on all of the exams, you can't decide to take the final off. Well, I mean, I guess you could, but you're going to get a 0 for that. So the final exam counts as a grade on its own, no matter what. However, 430 is the prerequisite for 431. And the things we're learning in this class aren't just things I randomly pulled out of a hat. A lot of the material you're learning in this class is stuff we're going to need for 431. So it benefits you to retain this information. So to encourage you to learn how to be successful in this class, to encourage you to retain this information, not only does the final count as a grade on its own, but it can be used to replace one of your lowest lecture scores. I know other instructors throw out the lowest lecture score. I've always hated that. I've always thought that was incredibly stupid, because that's like saying 1/5 of this class isn't important. Every single part of this class is important. So every single part of it counts. But if you can learn the material and retain the material, then I'm going to reward you for that. And that's what that ability to replace your lowest lecture score with the final does.
Thank you.
Yep, great questions. Excellent. So curving the grades, you're getting a participation. You can replace your lowest lecture score with lecture, again, lab all count, but lecture score with the final exam. There are extra credit opportunities, all of these types of things to maximize your points. And ultimately, your points determine your grade. I do not determine your grade. You determine your grade. And here's the key. To get an A in this class, you need to get 90% of the points. To get a B, you need 80% of the points. You'll have your scores online. You'll be aware of them. You'll be able to see them in your grade book. You'll know exactly where you are and what you need to do to get your grade that you want in this class. But at the end of the semester, if at the end of the semester you have 89.7% of the points, what is your grade in this class going to be?
A B.
It's going to be a B. All right. Because with curving the grades, with allowing you to replace your lowest lecture score, with giving you participation, with giving you extra credit opportunities, if with all that assistance, you still couldn't get 90% of the points, then you truly did not earn an A. The good news is it doesn't happen often, but every once in a while, is there someone who is 15 points away from the grade that they wanted in this class? Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes that happens. That is why it's important to make sure you're turning in all your homework assigned, make sure you're maximizing your points, get all the free points, and do the best you can on the exams. All right, questions on that? All right, doom and gloom stuff. Here, we'll start here. The course policy in the syllabus is that there are no makeup exams or quizzes. If we have a daily quiz, those daily quizzes are usually the first 5 minutes of the last 5 minutes of class. And if you're late logging on and don't get a chance to complete that daily quiz, you do not get access to it again. You will get a 0 for that. All right. And again, hopefully with 1,300 points in this class, missing one 5-point daily quiz isn't going to be the end of your grade in this class. But like I said, it is important to maximize your points. Yes, Brianna?
What about for those of us that are either sick, or I'm not a mother, but for those of us that have like a sick kid or family member that make it so that we can't log on?
Unfortunately, with the daily quizzes and things like that, I appreciate that things happen. They are, like I said, being 5 points. Hopefully it isn't too punitive to miss it. 5 points, hopefully, doesn't make or break anyone's grades. But unfortunately for the daily quizzes and things like that, there's no makeups for that. Now, obviously, for a 5-point quiz, that's not necessarily going to make or break your grade. Hold on, Andrea, let me finish this and then I will answer your question. However, obviously missing a lab or lecture exam is much more significant because that is much more points. Now, again, the policy in the class is that there are no makeup quizzes. However, as it also says here, I will make every attempt to be able to arrange a makeup exam for you. Again, unfortunately, because of the pace of the class, the fact that we're online and everything else that goes along with that, I can't with 100% guarantee that we'll be able to make those accommodations. Obviously, the sooner you make me aware of the fact that you have a conflict, if you've looked at the schedule and you see, lo and behold, grandma really is getting married in Vegas before the 4th exam, then let me know those things as soon as you can, and I will try to make accommodations. Now, obviously, grandma's getting married in Vegas are things that are usually planned in advance. Car accidents, sick kids, things like that typically aren't. And of course, if you're being raced to the emergency room, I shouldn't be the first person you call. But if something like that happens, I will try to make those arrangements and we'll try to make those accommodations. I can't with 100% guarantee them. And so that's why the class policy has to be this way, because I can't guarantee you a makeup exam, but I will make every effort to give you one. However, you also only get one. If grandma's getting married in Vegas before the 2nd exam and we are able to find a time, we're able to accommodate a makeup exam for that. And then you miss a 2nd exam later on, then unfortunately for that one, you will get a 0. To maintain the integrity of the class, I can't do too many independent exams for an individual. So they have to try to maintain that, but I will try to make those arrangements. Andrea, now your question.
So athletes are back on campus and we're competing again. So that does interfere with some of the class schedule. Are you going to have any lenience with that if we send you the game schedules in advance?
So what I would say is that, again, I understand and I'm happy to make accommodations for things like the lectures and participation points and things along those lines. But the exams, especially because it's online, the exams are when the exams are. Again, if we're able to make an accommodation for one, I would be able to do that. If you have more than one conflict with an exam with your sport, then that's going to be a more serious issue that we would have to take up with your coach and discuss that way. Most of the schedules, and again, I've already been in contact with several students who are dealing with sports and who have already been in contact with me. So I'd encourage you to reach out to me if you see a conflict on the schedule so that we can work with that. Okay. Speaking of working with your schedules, we have a great resource on campus, the DSPS, Disability Student Programs and Services. If you require any type of assistance for any type of accommodation, they're a great resource that are able to help. Obviously, that includes and is not limited to things like learning disabilities or other issues along those lines. One time on campus, we had a student an athlete who had just had back surgery and so wasn't able to sit for long periods of time. And so obviously having someone stand up and walking around during an exam is something that can be very distracting. And so they were actually able to get a room with a standing desk for that student to be able to take their exams with. That's an amazing program that is really good at helping students to get all the resources necessary to be successful. So if you require any type of assistance, make sure you speak with them and then get those forms to me so we can make those arrangements. Second doom and gloom, academic honesty policy. Again, American River College values academic honesty. Current policies prohibit dishonesty such as cheating, plagiarism, and knowingly furnishing false information to the college. There's all the obvious stuff. The first question on all of your exams is going to be an integrity question, saying that the information you're providing in yours is yours alone and you're not being provided any assistance from outside resources. It is going to be important to scan your space and your area to ensure that you show me that you don't have any resources and materials that around you aren't providing that. You cannot have a smartwatch on, do not have earbuds on during the exam, all of those types of things. I think those are all the things that are obvious. I think what isn't as obvious and sometimes people have a problem with is the other thing that falls under the academic honesty policy is writing answers in your own words. Where I find problems is twofold, right? There are a ton of Quizlets that you can find out there, and taking the answer from a Quizlet flashcard and cutting and pasting that into an answer on a homework assignment, obviously on an exam, that would be dishonesty. But on the homework assignment, when you're working at home, that is also plagiarism. Write the answers in your own words. And here's the other thing. I've already encouraged you, and I want you guys working together in groups. But when you're working together in groups, I don't want you all coming up with the exact same answer and writing it the exact same way. Right? That's like having one homework assignment where you put all 4 names on it. You photocopy it 4 times and put it in. Discuss what the correct answer is, come up with the right answer, but then write it in your own words. Writing answers identical to somebody else in the class is also plagiarism. So I want you to work together. I want you to use your outside resources, but I want you to write your answers in their own words. Should an issue involving academic honesty become an issue, you will be reported to the student rights and responsibilities group, and you will get a 0 on that assignment or that exam. And hopefully that will be all. If it continues to be an issue, then things can escalate from there. But again, rarely has that been an issue. So hopefully that we can avoid that kind of stuff. Last doom and gloom, if you have not signed, if you're not here today, then A, you're not hearing this right now, but B, if you have not clicked and completed the attendance quiz for today with the access code NOS, then you are officially not here and you will be officially dropped from this class. If you have not done that attendance quiz, then you will not be added to the class, even if you're the first person on the wait list. So make sure you have completed those activities. Some of you should have gotten emails. Actually, let's do this as a poll because this is important. Excellent. So you guys see the poll right now? How many of you have received at least one email from me? All right, there's 5 people who still haven't answered. Keep going. 4. Two more. 1 more. Only 1 person's asleep. That's a good start. All right, so that's good. Excellent. So what that tells me is that, okay, excellent. If you hadn't got an email from me, whoever the person is asleep with, hopefully they got an email from me as well. Good, that's perfect. So you got those emails, that there isn't any issues from that. That means though, that some of you haven't had your prerequisite, got an email from me about that and still have not resolved that. So if you do not have your prerequisite for this class, and again, that is a chemistry with a lab, 4 or 5 units with a C or better, then you should have gotten an email from me about that. And if you do not have that for me by Wednesday, you will be dropped. If you are not here on Wednesday, there will be another attendance quiz on Wednesday. If you do not complete that attendance quiz on Wednesday, then you will be dropped from the class. And I do this to try to make, because we have more students here right now than I'm able to enroll in the class. So I want to make sure that the people who are enrolled in the class are the people that want to be here. All right, so after that, I'm hoping attendance issues will be resolved. We'll be able to get in everybody who wants to get in, get out everybody who doesn't want to be here, so we can have a successful class. Yes.
After class today, like I'm on the wait list, will the number change, like from number 10 to number, like if
I understand. So here's what's going to happen. As soon as I'm done with the syllabus, we are going to take a short break. During that break, I am going to see who's here and who's not here. And based on that, I will enroll some people into the class. And by enroll, I'll tell the people to, and we'll go through that process and I'll explain what those people need to do to be able to add the class. And so I will add some people today. Then again, because there's still some uncertainty on prerequisites and things along those lines, if you're not added today, then I will try to add more people on Wednesday as well. Okay, so that's the game plan, is try to add as many as I can today, and then we'll add more on Wednesday as needed. And hopefully at that point, we'll get everybody in who needs to get in. Ava.
So quizzes need to be done during class time. So for example, Wednesday, you said, I believe the quiz is going to be in the first part of class.
Well, again, you're going to have an attendance quiz just like today, where you have to, at the very beginning of class, you need to fill that out. When we start getting to the daily quizzes, the 5 for 5s, those are either at the very beginning of class. So again, like today, there will be a notice at the beginning, or but when I'm done lecturing, we will have a quiz at that point as well.
I'm talking about the chemistry quiz because I know it's a little different. So are we supposed to be doing
chemistry
that?
Quiz is everything falls into the quizzes tab. So that's kind of just the way that is. The chemistry quiz will not be available till class ends today. At the end of class today, it will become available and you have to complete it by Wednesday morning.
Oh, okay. So we could take it not in class. That's okay.
Yes, in fact,
Okay.
you cannot take that one in class. I'm just talking about the daily quizzes that you take in class. Savannah.
I'm sure that you're going to talk about this like when the exam gets closer, but for the scanning, does that mean like we're actually going to have to move our computer around our room, or is that just like you're going to trust us with that and just know that we don't have anything, or how does that work?
Unfortunately, as much as I would love to be able to trust you guys as students, no. What you are going to have to do is if you've got a laptop, then you're going to pick up your laptop, going to show me your workspace. I've just disconnected my microphone, so I don't know if I still sound as good, but you are going to pick this up and you are going to show the area around you. You're going to show your workspace and the things that are like that and around you so that you have that way. There's several examples of scannings, appropriate scannings in the modules that you can get to there. And so you have to do that. Yes. If you have a desktop with a detachable camera, you can pick the camera up and show it that way. If you have a desktop with an attached camera, then what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to get a big mirror. And with that mirror, you're going to need to show me the space around your desktop. You're going to have to show me the space around you so that I can see that it is clear of material. As much as I would love to trust you all as students to maintain the integrity of this class, you need to show me your workspace. And if you do not show me your workspace, you will lose at least 10% for not scanning the area properly. And if you're not scanning the area properly, and you're also doing a whole lot of this during the exam, then you're very likely going to get a 0.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Hold on, I want to get to one point that Neil has text typed in here. You are correct. You must do a scan. There is a time for the scan, but you can with the Proctorio. If you just did that a couple times, it will usually, after a certain amount of time, accept that. But I actually have to go in and view these to make sure. So if that's all you do, you can trick Proctorio into thinking you've scanned by just giving it a little wiggle like that. But you will get a 0 on the exam if that is what you do. And so there are some examples. So yes, you can't continue without scanning, but that doesn't mean that you've done a good scan. So it is important to make sure you do an appropriate and a good scan to maintain your points in the class.
Do we need to like flip the camera, or can I just hold my laptop and
just hold the laptop? And here's the other thing. Again, there are examples that you should look at. One of the things that people will do is they will spin around while they stay in the middle of the screen. Notice that doesn't show you my space around me. Turn the computer, show me down. So you notice I have another laptop, I have some books here, I have another monitor. None of those are things that should be on your desk when you're doing this. So obviously I don't have an appropriate workspace right now for taking a quiz. But have a clear space. If you're doing it on your bed, that's fine. You just have to show the workspace around you. And as I said, there's several good examples that you can see in the modules. Jacqueline, I think you were next.
Yeah, I have a question. So if you have like a video game monitor on your desk, can you like cover that with a towel, or do we have to fully take it off?
Cover it. If you have a second monitor like I have, as long as it's covered with something appropriate, you're right, so that I know that you're not using it.
Okay.
Amanda?
Yeah, just so everyone knows, there's you can practice the Proctorio. It'll show you, like, you can do a practice run. I don't know if that's helpful, but on Pearson it has like you can practice the scanning.
Cool. I didn't know that. That's cool. Awesome. Thank you for that. All right. Excellent. Any other questions? I'm sorry?
I still have a question.
Yes.
So I used Proctorio before in a previous class, and I know it flags like if it hears other sounds or if people are walking in the same thing. if I live with roommates that are going to walk in and out of the room or walk behind me or whatever, how's that supposed to work?
Okay, so you are correct in that it flags those things, but all that means is that it's one more thing that I have to look at. You're not going to automatically lose points for that. Now, I appreciate, and now again, when you say roommates, that seems to say to me adults, and hopefully with an adult, you could say, hey, I'm taking an exam, don't come in here for the next 2 hours. Right. But again, if you have 3-year-olds, then it's a little harder to reason with them. Right. So if someone walks by behind you, you're not going to automatically get a 0 on the exam. If they walk by behind you and say the answer to number 14 is C, that's when we start to have a problem.
Right. Okay.
Right. Stephanie.
Yeah, on what she said, because when we were doing the scanning of the room and with the ID, my 4-year-old kept, walking to the frame. So I was like hoping I wouldn't get like in trouble for that,
Look, we love to think of academia taking place in this ivory tower where we're just there learning knowledge for knowledge's sake. I appreciate that we all are dealing with real life, and we're also in an online class dealing with real life at home. Right. So I appreciate that happens. And like I said, with little kids, I know it can be an issue. So again, just having a little kid walk onto the screen and wave and say hi or walk behind you or complaining because their cookie broke or whatever isn't going to, cause you to lose points. Right. So again, you are correct. Proctorio is an automated system that will flag all of those things. But one of the great joys in my life, and hopefully you can sense the sarcasm in that, is that I get to sit here and watch all these videos to make sure that these flags are just kids crying about broken cookies. And but like I said, if on the other hand, someone's over here discussing bones with you during the exam, or you're constantly looking down at something and you haven't shown me the space around you, then that's where we start to have problems. All right. Sarah, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, like if something like that does come up, are the tests timed? Because if I have to go help, the little one or something like that, like, is it okay if I, just kind of send them off, but I don't want to like lose time on my test because I had to deal with that for, 2 minutes.
So yes, the exams are timed. And so what I would encourage you to do, again, I know it's more challenging when you have little kids, but if it's possible to get someone, I don't have this plugged in anymore. If it's possible to get someone to come in and help to assist with the kids just during the exams, obviously if it happens during a lecture, it's not as big of a deal. But on the 5 days that we're having the exams, 6 with the final, if you can make sure that you've try to your best to make arrangements to have someone to assist you with those things to minimize that, because here's where we start to run into a problem. If you're sitting there and a kid screams in the other room and you leave the room for 5 minutes to go deal with that, right? Well, I've heard a kid crying, but you've also left the room for 5 minutes and I have no idea what you're doing outside in that other room. And so those type of subjective things are, I don't want to have to make those, let me rephrase that. I cannot make those types of subjective rationales. So in something extreme like that, that would be a cause for losing points on an exam for something like that. So again, for those times when we're having the exams, I appreciate emergencies come up. If something happens after the exam, try to email me and we can communicate it on a case-by-case basis. But for the most part, yes, once the exam starts, you have a set time to complete it in, just like if we were in the classroom. Yes, Amanda.
I'm just wondering, I happen to like say things out loud or read it out loud to help me like retain. Is that going to flag you every time?
Again, so here's the things that I would say about that. This class is normally not an online class. We are normally in the classroom. And
True.
If you were in the classroom, you wouldn't be able to eat, you wouldn't be able to drink, you wouldn't be able to talk. Right?
That's
Those
true.
are the cases if you were in the classroom. So what I ask is you try to keep those things to a minimum.
Okay.
If you start to get a scratchy throat and you need to have a drink and you happen to have a drink right next to you, then it's okay. But again, we have that problem. If you have a mug sitting here on the counter, how do I know you don't have answers written on the back of it or answers on the inside of it? And we laugh about things like that, but we've also all heard stories. There was an issue a couple of years ago on campus where people were taking their plastic water bottles, unpeeling the labels, writing answers on them, and then putting the labels back on so that as you looked into the water bottle, you could see the answers. So as much as we make fun of these types of things, there are people who take advantage of it. So the more of that you do, the more questionable your exam becomes. And by you, I mean the generic you. I don't mean you, Amanda. But I just, the more that a student can minimize these types of disruptions, the more obvious and the more integrity there is to the exam. And that's really what I'm looking for. I fully appreciate that some of this stuff is a little subjective, but unfortunately, that's the nature of this. We have to balance the unusual circumstances that we're dealing with maintaining the integrity of the class. All right. These are all great questions. I love this. I like how interactive you guys are for the first day. That makes me very, very happy. All right. So we got a little off track, but just to make sure you're here today and have done the quizzes, make sure you're here Wednesday, and then you'll be able to add or you'll be able to stay in the class. That's all the doom and gloom. We kind of already talked about the take advantage of each other, work in groups, participate in the class, complete all the lab activities. A great example of that, your lab manual has these pre-labs. At the beginning of each section of your lab manual has a pre-lab. That pre-lab is some labeling activities, vocabulary activities. It is typically not something you're going to turn in for a grade. But if you actually take the time to do those pre-lab activities, they're going to be a great study tool that is going to help you to be successful. All right. So take advantage of all of those resources in there. The last thing that I wanted to show you on this page is we have the tentative schedule of what we're going to be doing, including the exams and stuff like that. But what I love about Canvas is at the very bottom of the syllabus page, we have a course summary, which shows you when everything is going to be due. So notice, as we talked about on Wednesday, we have a lecture, chemistry quiz, lab safety form, the office meetings due, and all of these links will get you to there. Yes, Amanda.
You said that our exams are timed. Is it always the same amount of time or does it vary?
It's going to vary depending on the number of questions. So each exam, so for instance, when we're doing the bones, there's going to be a lot more anatomy on that than when we're doing the nervous system, for instance. So it will be a larger lab exam. So yeah, but both exams will fit within the 4.5 hours we have of the class, and usually not more than 4 hours. And again, that's how much time is allocated for them. That's not necessarily how much time it's going to take you to take it, but there should be time for take a break in between the two exams as well.
Where does it say the pages that are due, just like you had in the beginning?
So again, so there's two things. Notice here on the in the syllabus, at the very bottom of the syllabus page, you have a list of the course summary of all of the assignments. Also, if you have your calendar set up, in your calendar, it will show you, you can have it set up for your classes. I don't think I have it set up for my classes here. There you go, where it will show you when things are due. Also, when you go to your course home, you have a list of things to do as well. So there's lots of places in Canvas where it shows you where what things are due, and these are links to these things. And most of these are links that go to the modules where we have the material in here. So notice, for instance, here in the modules, we have the getting started. Here's another link to that Proctorio protocol page. Here are some of the assignments that you can take, the quizzes, and all this is where our chemistry quiz is located, info sheet. Here is where those scanning examples are that you can see, our link to our master in A&P and all of that. Notice in our study tool, there is a link to the Open Lab and a link to the Science Success Center, as well as some links to some websites that are very beneficial, and also my YouTube page where I post the lectures. And then this will also be where you come, this is where you'll turn in your assignments, the lecture handouts, and all those things as well. All right. Look, I did that quick. We'll come back and look at this in a minute later. So I want to do that later. But what I want to do first, as I promised, is to take our first break. So again, and then the last thing to you, as you mentioned, at the beginning of each class, I will have the whiteboard set up here with this information that also reminds you of what's coming up in the coming days. Yes, Amanda, I think you were first. Oh, did I not put your hand down from before? Sorry, never mind. Yes, Aubrey.
Yeah, I just had a quick question about the lab.
Yep.
I know, like, usually when you go into labs, you have to wear like closed toe, like no sandals. Is that?
Yes, so you are correct. If you go on campus for the open lab, you must wear closed-toed shoes. I do not believe he is going to be doing any wet lab stuff like cadavers or anything like that. But if you were to do that, then you would also need a lab coat and goggles. But if you're just going in to work on the models or to look at the charts or to look at the bones, you don't need anything other than closed-toed shoes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, so here's the plan. We are going to go ahead and take our first break. Again, last call. Is there anybody here who has not taken the attendance quiz? All right, we are going to restart at, we're going to take a 20-minute break because I want to handle also all of our enrollment issues that need to be done. So we will restart at 9:40. And during this time, I will also determine enrollment, how many people I'm going to be able to add. So we will, excellent. So I will do that. We will take a quick break and then we will come back and deal with that. All right, any questions?
Do we just come back here, like just to
Yeah,
this
so
one?
you can just leave your, you don't have to disconnect. I'm going to shut off my video and shut off my microphone. You're welcome to do the same. I'm going to run and go get a cup of coffee. Believe it or not, this fast pace of speaking is without caffeine. I'm going to caffeinate, so then I'll really be going fast in the second part. So you don't have to disconnect. You can stay right here. That's what I'm going to do. But I will turn off my mic and my video so I can get my coffee, pick my nose, figure out who's going to be enrolled in the class, and then we will come back. All right. Questions on that?
Professor, I sent you just a notation to see if I can, for the lab manual, I sent it to you in an email just to see if the format is okay. Because I did download from Chegg, but I did a snapshot and then I notated it. If you can check that whenever.
Sure, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I
Okay.
won't do that. I won't do that today during class, but
That's
after
fine.
class,
Yeah.
I can look at that, yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, excellent. Any other questions? All right, I will see you guys at 9:40. Excellent. I make a point of emphasizing this now with the Labsters because since the grades are automatically input, if you get a 90 on it and it's out of 20 points, it will automatically put an 18 into the grade book for you. However, if you remember, I said that as long as you do 100% of the activity and get it at least 80% correct, you will get full credit. So when you get that 18, I don't want a panicked email from you. Just know that once the assignment is due, I will go in and manually update those grades to give you full credit for that. However, if you don't get 80, excuse me, if you don't get 80% correct, then whatever portion of it is completed correctly, that is the points that you will get for that.
Professor, for uploading the homework,
yes.
When you say as a PDF, but you said I can just take a picture on my phone and just upload it that way. Is that fine?
It is totally acceptable. I understand people have limitations on what they're able to do. The only downside for that from you, from a time standpoint, is some of these reviews may be 12 pages long. And so that means you're gonna have to take 12 pages and upload those 12 pages. And you can certainly do that. However, if you have a printer that, or a scanner or something that can convert them into a PDF, into a single PDF, you can just run those through there, and that's something that's easier. But if you just want to upload pictures, that is totally acceptable. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So there's an app called Genius Scan that I've used with previous teachers. You literally download it and it scans PDFs or whatever directly to your laptop, and it helps a lot.
Yeah.
You can also use Adobe Scan. If you have Adobe, there's Adobe Scan, which is what I use.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, so exactly. There are lots of options for those things. But like I said, even if you don't want to use those things, if you want to take 12 pictures and upload 12 pictures, I will accept that. So that as long as I can read what you've written on there. So don't take the pictures from so high up that I can't read what you've written on the page. But yeah, totally, those things are acceptable. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for those examples. That's awesome. Excellent. Now, as I mentioned, the homeworks are graded primarily for completeness. There are going to be some that will be graded for correctness, and I will always warn you when that is going to happen. But that also means as long as you put time and effort into it, you're going to get full credit even if it is wrong. And because I want you to have the correct information on a day that an assignment is due, as you can see here, the keys for those. So if we click here on the Unit 1 key, notice that I can't view it right now because it's locked, and it won't unlock until the end of class on August 30th, which should be a big hint that this is due on August 30th, right? Because on the day that an assignment is due, these review keys will post so that you get that immediate feedback. After you've turned it in, you can see what the right answers are right away, so it can help in the learning process. All right. As I mentioned earlier, I do have a discussion board set up with a water cooler. You guys were talking earlier. I know there's a lot of discussion going on about a Discord site. And if someone wants to post the link to the Discord site here in the discussion board, you can do that. If you want to post for forming study groups here, you can do that. If you just want to post, hey, on Friday, I'm going to be at Chipotle. Does anybody want to meet there to go over this material or whatever? This discussion board is for you to use however you want, which also means that instead of talking about, what's going on in the classroom, if you want to talk about how horrible the relief pitching is for the Giants, you're welcome to do that as well, whatever makes you happy. I ask for two things. This is an unmoderated group. I am not going to observe it. I'm not going to come here and monitor what you guys are talking about. I want this to be a space for you guys to use for you. So I insist that you be respectful of others that are on there. And I also insist that if someone is not being respectful, let me know. Since I'm not monitoring this discussion board, if someone is being disrespectful, someone needs to let me know, and I will remove that person. They will lose participation points, and other things could occur as a result of it as well. But I'll only be aware of it if you guys let me know. So again, please use this as your own space. There will be some other discussion boards as we get into some of the group projects you guys are going to be doing. That will also be where you'll have an opportunity to communicate asynchronously with each other by having a home base for your groups to be able to do that. And that is here as well. Your Labster dashboard shows you your grades. That's not how you access the Labster. You access Labster from the modules. So when you go to the modules, like for your first Labster activity, you'll just come here, click on the Labster homeostatic control. I am not in Chrome, so this won't work for me here, I don't believe. Here's the instructions, and then it pops it up. So this is where you do that. The last thing I wanted to show you, the other place you're going to use most of your time is the MyLab and Mastering. Now, MyLab and Mastering is going to look different for you than it is for me because I do it as an instructor. I don't know what the student view looks like, but what I do want to show you quickly from that are some of the key things you are going to be using. That's what I want. As I mentioned, your homepage is going to look slightly different. but you'll be able to use this to get to the assignment, including the introductory assignment that's here. But where you're going to be spending a lot of your time is going to be in one of two places. The first is in your e-text. You have access to the e-text, and when you go to the e-text, this e-text is an incredibly powerful tool that you have. You can see the cover, you can flip through the pages, you can do all of those fun things with this, increase and decrease the zoom of all of that. You can go to all of that, the table of contents, so a particular unit that we're covering. If you want to look at something like that, there's all sorts of amazing resources that are on here, adaptive introductory assignments and things along those lines. One of the things that I really like about it is as a very powerful search tool. So for instance, if you're not as familiar with mitosis, you can do a search for mitosis and it will show you not just where you can find it in the textbook. So it can show you where you find this in the textbook, but it'll have other resources like videos and things like that to help you. This is a dynamic textbook. You can highlight areas and you can change the color of them. You can add a note to it to say something along the lines of, oops, here, hold on, I'm gonna move this out of the way. I can add a note. Why is that not letting me add a note? That's weird. Okay, you can add notes to it. So this is what he's had on the exam and things along those lines. It is a great resource for those of you who like and are comfortable with electronic textbooks. This is a very powerful one. You can actually download chapters to your smart devices. So if you're going away camping for the weekend and you want to bring your iPad and study off of that, you can download the chapters, you can highlight, you can make notes, you can do all those things there. And then when you get home and sync it, it syncs it to your permanent copy of the textbook. So also when you move on to 431 next semester, all of the notes that you put in here for 430 will be there as well. All the bookmarks, all of the notes, all the highlighting, all of those things will be there. So again, if you like e-text, this is a very good one and a very powerful one. However, where you're going to be spending most of your time is in the study area. This study area is a very, very powerful resource. Let's start with probably one of the most important things in here, not because it's the best resource, but it's the one that there are going to be graded assignments out of. One of the graded assignments you're going to have, as we mentioned, is there are the two lab simulators, Labster, which is embedded already in Canvas, and PhysioX. PhysioX is not embedded in Canvas, so you have to access it through the Mastering A&P, like we've done here. Go to the exercises. And one of the things that's going to be due in this first section is exercise 1. Notice exercise 1 has 5 activities. I don't have to do them all at once, so I may just want to do the first activity. I'm going to read through the objectives, read the information, and then I'm going to get to a pre-quiz where I'm going to take that quiz and see how I do. And I don't do so hot. Notice after I've completed it, it gives me a choice of things that I can do. What I want to do is submit it to my lab report. I'm going to make a lab report as I'm doing this. You then follow the directions, drag the 20 molecular weight cutoff membrane into here. Excellent. Then I'm going to dispense 9.0 millimolar sodium chloride onto one side, and so on and so forth. You're going to go through the activity, do the experiments, collect your data along the way. They're submitting it, continuing it, complete the activities, go to a review sheet, answer the review questions, saving it all along the way. And notice at the end, I have a lab report. Now, notice my lab report's not very impressive because I didn't do anything, but that's because I took 2 seconds here to do it. However, once I've done this, I'm going to save this lab report. Oops, hold on. So as you scroll down to the bottom of the lab report, notice there's a printable, savable version. And then what you can do is you can either print this or you can just save it as a PDF. I'm going to save this as a PDF to my desktop. And now I have my lab report from the first assignment. I can then go back to my PhysioX and do a different activity, the second activity, and so on and so forth. And after I've done my activity, I can go back to my modules. Come to my assignments, my lab simulator, my PhysioX exercise 1, where I can now upload that activity, submit it. Notice I can do them one at a time like I've done here, and it's so proud of me. I can then do more, or if I do all 5 of them and I want to upload all 5 of them at once, I can do that as well. So 5 different activities, 5 different lab reports that you don't have to print out, you don't have to do anything. It will save it as a PDF and you can just upload them here. And if, again, it doesn't overwrite what you did before. So if you want to do them one at a time, that's fine. If you want to submit them all at once, that is fine. So you are going to spend a fair amount of time on these PhysioX exercises. They're not difficult. They are a little time consuming, so it's not something I would recommend you wait till an hour before class begins to start it because you won't complete them in time. But it is a worthwhile activity to do. The other place you're going to spend the majority of your time is here in the, like I said, in the study area. One of the best ways to do this is to study by chapter. So now there's not a lot going on in the early stuff. So let's find a fun chapter like bones. When we look at the skeleton, notice it gives you the sections of the textbook that are relevant. There is a glossary. There is a flashcard maker. There are videos, art labeling activities, all sorts of different things you can do that way. Different chapters have different materials for the muscle system. There are some great videos, interactive physiology. So it's a great place to come to see all of these great tools. And the other thing that you'll find here that'll be very useful is the Practice Anatomy Lab. Practice Anatomy Lab is basically a virtual cadaver. You have the opportunity. So for instance, when we're studying the skull, you can see the skull. It shows the different parts of the skull. You can have the labels on or off. As you're getting familiar with this material, you can take a quiz where it will show you something and you have to guess what that is, and you can check your answer and see if you're right or wrong. And when you're feeling particularly frisky, you can take a quiz where it shows you some feature and you have to type the answer in. This is really good when we're learning the bones. This is also going to be excellent when we're learning the muscles. When we're learning the muscles, for instance, the muscles of the arm, we have the cadaver and we can go through the different layers of the cadaver. So it's very interesting this way. However, if you notice, if you go back to the home page, there's also anatomical models. And so if we look at the upper arm, you will see that lo and behold, we have a model here identical to the model that is in the classroom. Lastly, the thing we're going to be doing first is histology. There is some limited histology here, not as good as the histology atlas, but it's not a bad starting point. So for instance, you remember we were talking about, I've mentioned the term ciliated pseudostratified columnar epithelial tissue. And so I'm going to go out on a limb and guess there's one in here somewhere. There we go. Lo and behold, there is our, oh, it's a simple columnar. Whoops, grab the wrong one. That's what I want. A ciliated pseudostratified columnar epithelial tissue is the tissue here. And so again, it's not as good as some of the histology atlases and things are, but it's not horrible either. So it is a great resource that's going to help you to be successful. So again, this is one of the 3 things that you must have for the class, this access to the to the Mastering ANP. All right. And those are all the things that you should need on the class to be successful. I know I went through these things quickly, but again, this is being recorded. And again, we'll go over these things again as we go through this more and more and as you familiarize yourself with it. All right, questions on this? All right, excellent. Thankfully, then, we are finally done with our introduction and we can get to what we're really here for. And that is our content. We can start our lecture now. Excellent. So as I mentioned already, we did the Science Success Center, so I'll jump past this and we will start with this, some definitions. Now, this is 430. This is the Big Dog Anatomy and Physiology class. I have also taught the 102, the Introductory Anatomy and Physiology class. And one of the things that I always find is interesting is on the first exam of the introductory class, I sometimes will ask the question to identify anatomy and physiology. And you'd be shocked at the number of people who a month into studying this aren't able to answer this question. So let's get it out of the way now. How do we define anatomy?
Anatomy is the study of structures in the body. So basically the bits and pieces.
Excellent. Yeah, absolutely. Anatomy is the structure, anatomy is the study of the structures of the body. And how does that differ from physiology?
Physiology is the study of the actual functions.
Excellent. Right. So this is my bicep brachia. That would be an anatomical distinction. And describing the process by which it contracts would be a physiological process. Excellent. Absolutely. And of course, one of the most important things we can learn in this class is, does the structure of something affect its function? Does the function of something affect its structure? This is the part where you all say yes.
Yes.
This is the part where you all say yes enthusiastically.
Yes.
Excellent. Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. Structure and function absolutely go hand in hand. So the structure and the function go together. Anatomy and physiology influence and affect each other. Absolutely. Excellent, excellent. Now, of course, these are big general terms, and there are many, many levels, many subdivisions to this. Let's see some small examples. Right here, we have some anatomy subdivisions. And again, you don't have to furiously write these down, but some of these should make some sense. What do you think regional anatomy refers to?
An area.
A specific spot.
Yeah. So for instance, if we studied everything that was going on in my arm, that would be regional anatomy. Gross anatomy are all the icky things, right? Is that what gross anatomy is? No. What is gross anatomy?
An amount.
Okay, not a bad guess. Can we be a little? So okay, let's think of it this way. What would the opposite of gross anatomy be?
Micro.
Excellent. Microscopic anatomy. Absolutely. So gross anatomy is the study of big things. So again, if we were looking at the femur, that would be something that would be big, physical, that we could hold in our hand. However, if we wanted to look at the organization of the tissue, I like that. Things that can be seen with the naked eye. That's good. Although we want to be careful with that, because obviously, hopefully, nobody can see your liver right now. But the study of the liver would be an example of gross anatomy, right? That kind of brings us to what's surface anatomy?
Visible.
So, okay, part of it could be visible, but when I look at you, what's visible?
Skin.
So is it just the study of skin?
Well, no, because that would be epidemiology.
True, or dermatology, if you think about it, could be dermatology.
Oh, dermatology.
Study the skin. Absolutely. But if back in his heyday, our former governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, was here and he was flexing for us, right?
Muscles.
We'd be able to see his muscles. If instead I had Kate Moss in here, we'd be able to look at her and count her ribs, right? Basically, surface anatomy, you guys have kind of got it. It's the things that can be seen or felt from the surface, perceived from the surface. So again, you can feel someone's arm and feel the definition of their muscles. You can feel their bones inside. So there are things that can be, I like that. Oh, that's a great description. Things that can be studied without dissection. I like that a lot. That's perfect. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great example of surface anatomy. Excellent. And it's not just sight though. It can be feel as well. Right? So you can feel the muscles, you can feel the bones. You don't have to necessarily just see them. So it isn't just the things you see, but things that can be, I like that. What was the wording of that? I'm going to totally steal that. It can be studied
without dissection.
There you go. I like that. That was cool. Excellent. All right.
I wrote that down too.
And of course, if anatomy has many subdivisions, then so does physiology. And so again, and this is just a small sample of the different ways we can divide up the organization of the body for learning. All righty. Now, all living things are made up of common elements. And those common elements are not just randomly arranged. They are organized in a hierarchy. What do we mean by a hierarchy?
From beginning to end.
Okay, that'd be one example. Smallest to largest, exactly. Levels, excellent. You guys have the right idea. There are levels to it. Start to end, top to bottom, big to small, absolutely, right? And there are many things that have hierarchies. Government has hierarchies, right? We have the president and the vice president, and I think we have dukes or something, I don't know. Government is confusing. Let's talk about something much more important, football, right? In football, you have a head coach, and then you have an offensive and a defensive coordinator. And under that offensive coordinator, you may have an offensive lineman coach and a receivers coach and so on and so forth, right? It has those levels to it. And of course, anatomy and physiology have levels to it as well. So let's discuss that. Let's bring up our whiteboard so I don't have to do it on this screen. When we're looking at our levels of organization for humans, what is the lowest level that we can study the body at?
Molecules.
Excellent, I like that. So at a chemical or molecular level. All right, that's gonna be too big, I don't like that. Right, this is the smallest level. We can talk about the carbon, we can talk about the water, we can talk about, all of those types of things. This is the lowest level that we can study this at. And of course, if we take a bunch of these chemicals and we put them together, what do we get as the next level?
An organelle.
True, and organelles
Or
are part of
cellular levels.
Excellent. Sounds good. Cells and organelles. Now, obviously, if I have a bucket of chemicals, do I have a cell?
If you have what? Sorry, what was that?
If I just have a bucket of chemicals, do I have a cell?
No.
No, excellent, right? It has to be put together in a meaningful way. And in particular, what is the big difference between the cellular level and the chemical level? What is the biggest difference between the two? True, definitely the size and the structure of cells and organelles are more complex, more complicated. But what do we say about cells that we don't say things about carbon or water or glucose?
It's living.
Exactly. Cells and organelles are the smallest level of life. It's the lowest level of life. Now, when I say life, what do I mean by life? What are some of the requirements for life? All right, growth, gas exchange, right? I wouldn't say a single-celled organism breathes, but definitely it has gas exchange that has to take place. Give me a couple other examples. Those are some two good ones. Give me at least a couple more.
Reproduction.
How can you tell that reproduction? Excellent. Right? How can you tell that broccoli is alive and that rock isn't? Excellent, right? Able to make more cells to expand and grow, able to metabolize. Excellent, that's a great one. Respond to their environment, reproduce. Excellent. All of these are examples of things that are alive. And even the simplest simple-celled organism is capable of doing all of those things that we involve in life. And in fact, if we were to take a single-celled organism and cut it in half, what would we get as a result of that? You have a single-celled organism, you cut it in half, there you go, you get two cells. And those two cells are going to run off and live happy lives. Same thing with you. If I cut off your left hand, is your left hand going to run off and live a happy life all by itself? No, because unlike that simple-celled organism, we have more layers of organization to how we are put together. When you take cells and put those cells together, you get our next level of organization. And what's our next level of organization? Tissues. Excellent. Not surprisingly, there are again going to be rules. If I just have a bucket of cells, do I have a tissue?
No.
No. So what are the criteria for a tissue?
They're functioning together.
Exactly. I like that. Absolutely. And you got the, absolutely. So these are cells that are going to be similar in function and or structure. Oops, what just happened there? So notice that cells don't have to be identical, but you need cells that are similar to each other, either similar in the way they're shaped or similar in what they do. And when you put those together, you have a tissue. You put tissues together to make what?
Muscles.
True, although we can go more general than that in the terms of organs. Muscle would definitely be an example of that. Of course, we do have to be careful. If I have a big sheet of muscle tissue and I slap more muscle tissue onto it, do I suddenly have an organ?
No.
No.
No. So what's the criteria? How do I go from a tissue to an organ? There we go. Oh, I like that. That's excellent. We need to put different tissues together to serve a specific function. Excellent. And even though someone already answered it, how many different tissues do you need to have? Yeah, it's got to be at least two. What's the largest organ of your body?
Skin.
Skin, absolutely. And your skin is essentially made up of two main types of tissues. A thin layer of an epithelial tissue sitting on top of connective tissues, and that's pretty much the organ. It's the biggest organ of the body and pretty much just made up of two tissue types, slapped together, serving that major function of our body. Awesome. Organs are used to make what?
Organ systems.
Organ systems. How many organ systems do we have?
13.
13, 11, which one is it? $11. We'll figure it out later. If you were to take all of those organ systems and put them together, what would you have?
An organism?
Yeah, an organism or an individual. Right? Excellent. Now, can our hierarchy continue? Yeah. Individuals can be families or clans or, you know, societies or population, right? At that point, once you start going up, exactly, you're all in sociology after that. But for the most part, absolutely can continue. However, this is where we're going to focus. And again, we've done it here with the pretty words. Your textbooks got the pretty picture, showing these different levels of organization. Now, our goal, right, chemical to cellular, cellular to tissue, tissue to organ, organ to organ system, and from organ system to the organism or the individual. Our goal, the fun part of this class, the wheelhouse for this class is right here. What's fun for us, what we want to do is spend all of our time here talking about organs and organ systems. However, to really understand this, unfortunately, to understand organs and organ systems, we need to understand tissues. And to understand tissues, we need to understand cells. And to understand cells, unfortunately, we do have to talk a little bit about chemistry. So what we're going to basically do for the next month is build this foundation. Our goal for the next month is basically to build a foundation of chemical cells and tissues that we are going to use for the rest of 430 and all of 431. So once we spend the next month building this foundation, then we'll get to spend the rest of 430 talking about organs and organ systems, and all of 431 talking about organs and organ systems. All right. Questions on that? All right, perfect. I know this is a lot of material. I know we have a lot more to talk about. I know it's intimidating. And because of that, I feel kind of bad. So everybody in the class, after class today, is invited to my house for milk and cookies. There's my house. There's me. I'll be standing outside with the pitcher of milk, with all the cookies on the plate. That looks like a picture, sure. Right, and class gets done at 12:35. So how many people should I expect by one? How many cookies should I bake?
37.
37? Because 37 people are going to be there and you're all going to just want one cookie? You drive all the way out here?
I want at least 4.
Okay, someone wants at least 4. Excellent. But how many students should I actually expect to make it to my house by 1 o'clock? Based on this.
0.
Yeah, 0, exactly, right? If I was handing out $100 bills instead of cookies, how many should I expect here by 1 o'clock?
0.
Exactly, right? Okay, so there you go. $100 bills instead of cookies. Still, no one's going to show up. Why not? Why isn't anybody going to be here at 1 o'clock?
No address.
All right, this picture by itself has no meaning. There's no labels, there's no orientation, there's nothing to it, right? There's no details, there's no specificity. So it's meaningless by itself. And that's one of the most important things in anatomy and physiology. Biology in general, but especially anatomy and physiology, especially genetics, are really challenging. And the reason they're really challenging is because it is like learning a new language. We have our own vocabulary, we have our own terminology. And this is vitally important because if you're laying there in a stretcher in front of me injured, and I'm calling the specialist who lives across the country to explain to them what's wrong with you, we need to have a shared language so that we can understand and I can precisely describe to them what's going on with you, and they can precisely describe to me what I need to do about it. It's not that different from geography. And just like geography, it starts with a map. And our map in anatomy and physiology is what is known as the anatomical position. Anybody here know what the anatomical position is?
It's standing upright, facing forward, feet forward, arms slightly to the side with your palms forward.
Excellent. Any chance you want to demonstrate that for us on camera?
Sure. Hold on, let me move everything. Okay, hold on. Essentially like that.
Perfect. Absolutely. And obviously we can't see your feet, but
Yeah.
those are facing forward.
They're facing forward.
How do you pronounce your name?
Meal.
Meal. Okay, thank you, Meal. I appreciate that. Excellent. Absolutely. And as Meal demonstrated excellently for us, and as you can see here in this picture, this is what the anatomical position is. It is standing upright, facing forward, feet forward, arms to the side, and most importantly, palms facing forward. When you have your patient curled up in a ball on a stretcher, cut up into pieces and spread across the yard, when we talk about the human body, we always talk about it in terms of anatomical position, right? Starting with something as easy as left and right. And of course, which arm is this for this individual?
Right.
Right, right. Notice we always assume the patient when we're talking about that. So that is the right arm. So if this person had a laceration on their right arm, that would be where it would be located. Right? So just like a globe has a north, a south, an east, and a west. Then when we talk about a globe, we have North America and South America and Asia and all of those. And that's what we have here, what we call our regional terms. As I mentioned, one of the things I love about this class is hard, and so I don't have to be tricky. If we spend 2 hours talking about a concept, that concept's probably pretty important, and there's very likely going to be an essay question on it on the exam. This is the one exception. This is going to be on the screen for about 30 seconds. But this could easily be as much as 25% of your first lab exam. You need to know all of these regional terms, and you need to have known them yesterday, because we're going to use them again and again and again. For instance, you can't see me, I'm not on screen, but I just slapped my right thigh. What is the appropriate regional term for my right thigh? Not quite. Coxal's a good guess, but no, it's actually more the thigh as opposed to hip. Femoral region, excellent, right? The femoral region is the name for that, which conveniently enough happens to have the largest bone in our body in it. What is that largest bone of our body called?
Femur.
Femur. There you go. Excellent. There happens to be a very large blood vessel, an artery, that passes through this region of my leg. Guess what that artery is called?
Femoral artery.
Femoral artery. There happens to be a large nerve that innervates the anterior part of my leg in that region. Guess what that's called? What do you think we call the nerve in the upper thigh region? These questions should be getting easier.
Femoral nerve.
Femoral nerve. There you go. See how easy that was? There's a large muscle group on the anterior part of your upper thigh. Guess what that's called? Again, these questions should have been getting easier. Well, it's the quadricep muscles, but they're the quadricep femoris. So you've got the right idea. We are going to be using these regional terms again and again and again and again. And when talking about these regional terms, not only is it important to say things like femoral or to say things like brachial, right? But if it is a paired region, and what do I mean by a paired region? What do you think I mean when I say you have a paired region? Yeah, you have two of them.
Like arms and legs.
Yeah, you have two of them. You have two femoral regions. You have two knees. If you have to have knee surgery, if you've torn your anterior cruciate ligament and require knee surgery, and the nurse is rolling you into surgery, and she just says to the doctor, you know, do surgery on the knee. Do you want him to guess, flip a coin?
No.
Yeah, as we say, these are the easy questions, folks. No, absolutely not. So right and left matters. So know your regional terms. Right and left matters for these. And you need to know them yesterday. Yes, absolutely. All of these. All right. And again, it's in your lab manual. It's in your textbook. There are all sorts of places where you can find them. Know them all. Just like we need to know Sacramento and LA and California and America and all that kind of stuff. But knowing where Sacramento is, knowing where Roseville is useful, but it's even more useful if you can give driving directions between them. And so we have these orientation and directional terms like north and south and east and west. And like north and south and east and west, these work in pairs. So let's talk about our first pair, lateral and medial. What does that mean? What does lateral mean?
Up and down. Or I'm sorry, side to side.
Side.
True. Okay, side to side's not bad, but we can be more precise.
Away from center.
Oh, I like that. That's getting more on part. Absolutely. Here, let's again continue with my amazing drawing skills. Here's a person. And of course, they have to be in anatomical position. Perfect. So they're in anatomical position. What we have is this imaginary line that divides us completely and perfectly in half. Oh, that's really bad. Hold on. We have this midline, what we call the midline. And lateral means away from the midline. Is away from the midline. And so then, of course, towards the midline would mean what? Would be what?
Medial.
Medial. Right? So for instance, we could use these terms to describe the relationship, for instance, between the eyes and the nose. What is the relationship of your eyes to your nose?
Lateral.
Yeah, eyes are lateral, right? Your eyes are lateral to your nose. Of course, if we could switch that around, we could also say the nose is what in relation to the eyes?
Medial.
Medial, excellent. Perfect. And that is completely acceptable. Just out of curiosity, oops, is there a second term we could put in here that describe the relationships of the eyes to the nose?
Posterior and anterior.
Well, are your eyes and nose posterior and anterior to each other? Maybe a little bit. Your nose sticks out a little bit more, so you could say that was a little bit more anterior. Ah, there you go. I was looking for something more along the lines of that, superior. Because after all, your eyes are up here. Hopefully your eyes don't look like that, but you get the idea. And your nose is here. So again, I'd love to blame the whiteboard and my mouse for these drawings, but I'm really just this bad of an artist. Excellent. So we could put superior here because superior means what?
Above.
Above.
Yeah, towards the top. And then the opposite of that, we would say the nose is blank to the eyes. Inferior. Excellent. Excellent, excellent, excellent. All right. Now, someone did mention anterior and posterior. What does that refer to?
Front and back.
The front of your body and the back of your body.
Excellent. So if we take our person here and we put them to the side, there we go. Then we talk about here, let's hopefully the feet are enough, but we can go ahead and give them a nose and give them an eyes. Make them happy. There we go. Excellent. So which one is to the front?
Nose is to the front.
Well, true, the nose is to the front, but anterior and posterior, which one of those refers to the front?
Anterior.
Anterior, excellent. And then, of course, the back is posterior, which is easy to remember because your posterior is where your posterior is, right? Now, one of the important things, probably one of the most important things you're going to learn in this class is that anatomists hate you. They are horrible, horrible people, and they absolutely positively hate you. There are many ways they show this hate. They make rules and they break them all the time. But one of the main ways is they give the same thing different names that mean the exact same thing. And on that list, and I think someone's already put it on here, but I'm going to go ahead and make a point of it anyway. There are two terms that are identical to anterior and posterior on humans and mean the exact same thing. And what are those two terms that mean the exact same thing?
Ventral and dorsal.
Ventral and dorsal.
Ventral and dorsal, absolutely. And as Emil pointed out, ventral and anterior mean the exact same thing. They're interchangeable words. Dorsal and posterior mean the exact same thing. They're identical terms. Yes, Stephanie.
So are you gonna like trick us in asking us like what they mean, even though like the meaning could be the same thing on the quiz? Are you gonna have different, you know what I mean?
So when there are things that have multiple names that are correct, you may use any appropriate term. For instance, when we get to the nervous system, there is a structure in your nervous system referred to as the dorsal root ganglion. If on the exam, if you wrote posterior root ganglion, that's perfectly acceptable because those two terms are interchangeable. You could use them completely interchangeably with each other. Okay? But here's the problem. There is a term that is almost identical. Oh, no, hold on with that stickering. Almost identical to superior and inferior, but not quite the same. Any idea what that term, those two terms might be? What is similar but not identical to superior and inferior? Do I need to bring the list back up so you guys can see?
Yeah.
What are the two terms on here that are similar but not identical to superior and inferior?
Superficial and deep.
No, there we go. Neil's got it. Cephalic and caudal. Any idea what cephalic means?
Oh, towards the head.
Cephalic means towards the head. Whereas caudal means towards the tail. And so that kind of sounds like superior and inferior. However, they're not identical. Cephalic and caudal kind of are used more in developmental terms when we're like embryos and actually have heads and tails, but it's also used in our nervous system. So things towards the front of our brain would be considered cephalic, whereas things toward the back of our brain would be considered caudal. So notice in this case, oops, if I spell this correctly, the terms are similar, but they're absolutely not identical to each other. So whereas posterior and dorsal can be used interchangeably, cephalic and superior cannot. All right. Stephanie, do you have another question, or was that hand still up from before?
No, it's from before.
Okay.
What, mommy? Thank you.
I agree. All right, excellent. So there's that. Let's go back to our list now. We did dorsal and ventral. We've done all of those. That brings us to prone and supine. What do those refer to?
Laying down and sitting up.
Position.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah, position of the body. Absolutely. Remember, as we talked about, we always assume the body's in anatomical position, but is it always going to be an anatomical position? No.
No.
If someone was instead in a prone position, what would that mean?
They were laying down flat.
True. But you can lay down a couple of ways. You can lay down facing down. You could lay down facing up. Which one is
the
prone?
stomach down.
Stomach down. So for instance, if you were getting ready to plank or do a push-up, you would be in a prone position. Whereas if you were supine, what would be happening then?
You'd be
Your
laying
spine is on the ground.
Spine is on the ground. So for instance, if you're doing crunches or leg lifts or something along those lines. Absolutely. Excellent. Excellent. All right. These two are fun. Proximal and distal. What do those?
Proximal is at the location and distal is away.
True, and although we want to be more specific than location, and Emil's got it, it's away from or further from the core of the body. Absolutely. So let's go back to our drawing here, for instance. On our drawing here, for instance, if I were to talk about the relationship of my wrist, let's say it this way, to my elbow. What would the relationship of my wrist to my elbow be? My wrist is what in relation to my elbow?
Distal.
Distal. Excellent. Notice, not inferior. When we talk about the appendages, the arms and the legs, we have to use distal and proximal. So the wrist is distal to the elbow, or we could turn that around and say that the elbow is proximal to the wrist. But what if I add a third structure? What if I have my wrist, my elbow, and then I had my shoulder? How would I talk about the relationship of these three things? Well, let's start easy. What's my shoulder?
Proximal.
Proximal. What's my wrist?
Distal.
So what does that make my elbow?
Proximal
to
to
the
the wrist.
distal from the shoulder.
True, absolutely. It would be correct to describe the elbow as being proximal to the wrist and distal to the shoulder, but that's an awful lot to have to write. Instead, is there one word? And again, Neil seems to have it on the head, intermediate. Notice not medial. Remember, medial is towards the midline. So intermediate. So the wrist is distal, the shoulder is proximal, and the elbow is intermediate. All right.
Can you repeat, please, what distal means again?
Distal means away from the core of the body. Proximal means to the core of the body. And these are terms that are primarily used on the appendages. There's only really one other place proximal and distal are used. In like a hollow tube, like for instance, your small intestine. Where things enter the small intestine would be considered the proximal end. And then where things exited your small intestine would be the distal end. So basically proximal means towards the core or towards the beginning, and distal means away from the core or away from the beginning. All right, let's talk more relationships. What if instead I wanted to talk about the relationship between, pick a color I haven't used yet, purple's fun. Relationship between the heart and the ribs. What's the relationship between the heart and the ribs?
That's internal.
Okay, true, although internal is not a directional term we would use.
It would be deep.
It would be deep, absolutely, right? Because if you think about it, it is posterior to the front of the ribs, but it's anterior to the back of the ribs. It's medial to the side of the ribs. So we need a way to put that all together. So our heart is deep to our ribs. If your heart is not deep to your ribs, please see a doctor immediately. Now, if I added a third structure like the skin, so now I've got heart, ribs, and skin. The heart is deep. What does that make the skin?
Superficial.
Superficial. Exactly. And you've absolutely, Emil's got it right again. Absolutely. From a definition standpoint, deep means further from the surface of the body, and superficial means that he just loves you for your money. Right? Excellent. But we have this issue again where we have three things. Heart is deep, skin is superficial. What does that make the ribs?
Intermediate.
It makes them again intermediate. Excellent. Intermediate is that term that means in between. Awesome. Notice we've almost completely filled this whole list. And it hasn't been too bad because I think most of these are pretty intuitive. We had to be a little bit more specific about our details, but you all mostly had a good idea of what these, what these terms meant. There are really just two remaining terms that I think most people are not as familiar with, and that is contralateral and ipsilateral. Does anybody know what those two happen to mean?
Contralateral is when it crosses the midline, while ipsilateral is all on the same side.
Absolutely. So let's think about this for a second. Again, this is a term that is primarily used in the nervous system. So it's one of the places where we find this particularly. So let's think about this. If I want to move my right hand, if I have my right hand and I want to move that right hand, I want to wiggle my index finger. Where do I actually make that decision?
In your brain.
Where in my brain? Which side of my brain? Left side. Notice over here, if I want to move my right finger, I make that decision over here on the left side of my brain. So that information has to come down and then it has to cross the midline to go to my hand. So I consciously move my hand. But what if instead I touch something hot? There's that candle with that flame, and I touch something hot. What happens when you touch something hot?
You move your hand.
You move your hand. And are you making the conscious decision, hey, my hand is on fire. That feels really bad. I should probably move it.
No, reflex.
No, you move your hand before you're even aware of the fact that you should be cursing. You curse after the fact. And the reason for that is that signal travels up the arm to your spinal cord where a decision is made and then it comes back to move the hand. So notice that reflex, for instance, stays on the same side of the body. And if it stays on the same side of the body, it's ipsilateral. Whereas the conscious decision to move my body, in that case, when the information crosses the midline, we call that contralateral. So contralateral is when we cross the midline, ipsilateral is when we stay on the same side of the body. I think those are the only ones that are a little tricky. But once you get those down, you're pretty good to go. As I mentioned, this is a lot of material that we've covered very, very quickly, but it could easily be, like I said, it could easily be a quarter of your lab exam. But this is also a good thing, an easy thing, a fun thing to practice. We were talking earlier about those of you who have little kids. Little kids can be very disruptive when you're trying to study. So use them, right? Strip them down to their undies, grab some washable paint, and then pick 2 locations in their body. Start in the right acromial region and go to the left popliteal region. And using that paint, you can give driving directions. Right, starting from the acromial region, I'm going to move medially to the thoracic region. I'm going to go to the right thoracic region, go contralateral to the left thoracic region, move inferiorly to the mammillary region, right, inferiorly to the abdominal region, the upper left quadrant, and so on and so forth. And you can give driving directions from one place in the body to another, using your regional terms and your directional terms. Just like giving directions to campus. You're going to the open lab, right? You're going to take the Auburn exit off of 80. You're going to turn left onto Auburn. You're going to take right onto, Campus Boulevard or whatever it is, right? So exactly. Andrea, if you don't have any kids, then what you do is just run to the nearest park, grab some random child and ask them to get naked so you can paint them. And I'm sure there won't be any problems with that at all. All right, don't do that. All right, questions on this? All right, excellent. And if you don't have kids, then like I said, use your significant other. If you don't have a significant other, then go to the local bar, find someone there and ask them if you can paint them, right? Like the French girls, and they'll enjoy that. All right. That's a really old reference now. All right, excellent. Questions on that? All right, excellent. Your book's got a nice table that goes through all of these things. All right. Using your kids for the driving directions on the surface of the body to learn your regional and directional terms are very, very useful. However, what you should not use your kids for is for discussing the planes of section. There are several ways that we can cut a body into 2 pieces to be able to look at the inside of the body. So let's talk about that. What is one of the ways that we can cut the body into 2 pieces? What would those 2 pieces be?
You could do a sagittal section, which would be the right and left.
Excellent. Perfect. So you can have a right and a left. Absolutely. So one of the ways you could divide the body is into a right piece and a left piece. And you're absolutely correct. The fancy name we give for that is a sagittal section. Now, how many sagittal sections can you make of the body?
In theory, you can make infinite.
Yeah. You can make an infinite number of sagittal sections. If I just cut off my right thumb, would I have a right piece and a left piece? Yeah, absolutely. However, there is one specific sagittal section that divides the body evenly into 2 equal opposite pieces. Where would you make that section?
Directly in the middle, aka the median section.
Right, exactly. We do it. Exactly. We'd make it on the midline that we talked about, that line that goes through your nose, goes through your belly button. And you are correct. We would call that a median section, or what's the other name we would call it?
Mid-sagittal.
There you go. Excellent. So there's one specific special sagittal section that we call a median or mid-sagittal section. And so what do we how do we refer to the rest?
Parasagittal.
Exactly. So the rest are parasagittal sections. Perfect. Excellent. We have left and right. What's another way we can cut the body into two pieces?
The frontal plane.
Okay, front and back. Excellent. Of course, being in anatomy and physiology class, do we want to necessarily say front and back anymore?
No, that would be anterior and posterior, or vertal or dorsal.
Excellent. Absolutely. So front and back would be the common term we would use for that, but you're right. We can have an anterior and posterior piece or dorsal ventral piece. Again, those are completely interchangeable terms. And again, how many of these sections can we make?
Infinite.
Again, we can make an infinite number of them. And what's the fancy term we call for this? A front and back section?
Frontal section, and then there's coronal section.
There you go, frontal section, or what is also known as coronal. I used to have to explain that corona comes from the root of the word for crown. So basically, if you are making a coronal section, it'd be like putting a crown on your head, but of course we all know what corona means now. So it's a coronal section or frontal section that we would make. There's an infinite number of those. Is there a specific frontal section that gives us two equal and opposite front and back pieces? No, there's no special section for this one because the front of you doesn't look like the back of you. So you just have an infinite number of coronal sections. All right, we have left and right, we have front and back. What else do we have?
Horizontal.
True, that's the type of section. And what kind of pieces would you get from that?
Superior and inferior.
There you go. Top and bottom, but as you mentioned, we don't want to use those terms. So we would be superior and inferior. How many of these superior and inferior sections can we have?
Infinite.
Again, an infinite number of these. And what's the fancy term we give for this kind of a section?
I don't think there's any special sections, but there's just transverse sections.
Right. So you're right, there are no special, but we call these transverse sections.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're also referred to as cross sections. Both of those. And as someone mentioned, it's on the horizontal plane, but we typically don't use the term horizontal section. So transverse section or cross section for these. And you are absolutely correct. The top of you does not look like the bottom of you. If it does, please see a doctor immediately. There is no special section of these. So we have these three, what we call cardinal planes of section. Which with these three cardinal planes of section, as we can see, they're all at 90-degree angles to each other. So notice with a transverse section, we get a top and bottom section. With a frontal, we get our coronal, we get front and a back, anterior and posterior, sagittal, left and right. And of course, with these planes of section, the section is named after the plane of the section. So this would be a sagittal section of the body, and this would be a sagittal plane view of the body. However, are we required to always cut the body at perfect right angles like this?
No, those are just the three cardinal sections.
Exactly. So any other section that is at any other of these non-cardinal planes, how would we refer to any other section?
Oblique.
There you go. So any other type of section that is not one of these three cardinal planes, we refer to as an oblique section. So we have 4 different ways we can cut the body: sagittal, frontal, transverse, and oblique. And it's important to be able to cut open the body because the body on the inside, right, like that chocolate Easter bunny, is hollow on the inside. And so when we look on the inside, we want to be able to identify and recognize these spaces. All right. Questions on that? All right, excellent. When we get into the cavities, we start getting into more deep vocabulary. So again, I want to come at this a little bit fresh. So let's go ahead and take our second break here. So we will restart at, we'll take a 15-minute break. So it looks like that'll be 11:23. And I will start the recording. Yes.
How, when class ends, how do we come back to this recording?
Great question. So what happens is after the lecture ends, I have to compile the video from this. Once the video is compiled, I then need to convert it. Once I convert it, I then need to upload it onto YouTube. And then YouTube, once it gets uploaded to YouTube, it has to process it first at standard and then at HD. And so that does take a bit of time. So you don't have to send the link for the YouTube because, in fact, if you look on our website under the modules, under the study tools, notice the first link there is a link to my YouTube channel. So the lectures will be posted on the YouTube channels. Usually it takes a day or more sometimes for that to occur, depending on how things are happening. So that's why it's useful to go back and study, but it's not an alternative to coming to class. This is not an asynchronous class. You can't just sleep in and watch the videos whenever. Partially because there's activities that need to be completed within the classroom, partially because there's a participation grade for being here and quizzes and other things that need to be done. But also it can sometimes take 2 or 3 days before it gets uploaded. And so if I don't get, if Monday's lecture doesn't load till Wednesday afternoon, then you're already severely falling behind if you're trying to just watch the videos. So I think it is worthwhile to have this because I sit here and talk for 4.5 hours for you guys to be able to go back and review the material, but it is not an alternative to coming to class. Okay. All right, excellent. So let's do this. We'll come back here again. Again, we will restart at 11:23. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the video here. So, as I mentioned, like those chocolate Easter bunnies, we have a chewing nougat center. And in that chewing nougat center, we have some hollow spaces. And so when we identify those body cavities, we are going to use both general terms and specific terms. Again, this is not that different from geography. In general terms, if you told somebody where you lived, you would say on Earth. Not incredibly useful information, but it is completely accurate. Or you could say North America, or you could say California, or you could say Sacramento, or you could say, all right, Citrus Heights or whatever, right? You can go from general to more specific. And we can do that with our body cavities as well. A general body cavity would be our dorsal body cavity. What else could we call this body cavity?
Posterior.
Posterior, absolutely. And this posterior body cavity is made up of 2 more specific cavities. One of those specific cavities is the cranial cavity. Guess what forms the cranial cavity?
Brains, bones of the skull.
Okay, there you go. The bones of the skull. Absolutely. That is what forms the cranial cavity. And as you pointed out, what does the cranial cavity contain?
The brain.
The brain. Absolutely. Excellent. The second specific cavity that makes up the dorsal body cavity is the vertebral or spinal cavity. Guess what forms the spinal cavity?
The spine.
Well, what do you mean by spine?
Oh, wait.
Vertebrae.
Right, the vertebrae, the vertebral bones that make up the spine, absolutely. And what do they contain within them? What do they surround and protect?
Nerves.
True, although we can even be more specific than that. It does have nerves in it, but what's the even bigger structure it has in it?
Isn't it structure?
Yeah, what's the big structure found in the spinal cavity? You guys are overthinking.
Spinal cord.
Spinal cord. There you go. Exactly. The spinal cord. Absolutely. So notice here in yellow, we have this entire yellow space, which is the dorsal body cavity, and then two specific body cavities, the cranial cavity and the vertebral or spinal cavity. Now, notice, as we said, we are getting deep into vocabulary here. Vocabulary is important. It is important to be precise. My goal in this class is not to be tricky, but my goal in this class is to be precise. One of the reasons people lose points in this class, not is because they don't know the information, but because they don't read the question carefully. You have to read the question carefully so that you can answer it correctly. For instance, on an exam, I could have, for your very first question on the lab exam, this exact picture with a big arrow like this pointing right here. And there are basically two questions I could ask. Question one would be identify the specific space. And question two could be identify the general space.
So
and is the answer to those two questions the same?
No.
No. What is the answer to question one?
The cranial cavity.
Right. The specific one in this case would be cranial. Whereas the answer to question two would be
The dorsal body cavity.
Yeah. Right. And yeah, I didn't write cavity, but you get the idea. Notice if I move my arrow, is the answer to question two the same or different?
Same.
The same.
Same. Is the answer to question one the same or different?
Different.
Different, right? So notice, again, my goal here isn't to be tricky. I will be very precise in the way I word my questions, but I expect you to be equally precise in how you answer it. The problem is, during the exam, you're tired, this picture pops up, that arrow's pointing at this space, you get all excited. I know that's the vertebral cavity. The problem is, if you actually read the question says identify the general space. And while you have provided me with knowledge, did you answer the specific question? No. And if you didn't answer the question, even if you show me knowledge, I can't give you credit for that if you didn't answer the question correctly. And again, there's even more questions I could ask. Notice I could have the same picture, the same arrow, and I could ask you to identify the primary structure found in this space. And what would your answer to that have been?
Primary structure.
And here, I'll make it even easier for you.
Vertebra.
Sarah got the question right for the first arrow, but now I've moved the arrow. What's your answer here?
Brain.
The brain.
There you go. Absolutely. They don't have to all be hard questions. Right? So again, people often lose points, not because they don't know the information, but because they don't read the questions carefully. I spend tremendous amount of time and effort in being very consistent in my wording of these questions to be very specific and very precise, and I expect the same from you in your answers. All right. Questions on that? All right. Notice the yellow isn't the only cavity we have. We have this red cavity as well. And if the yellow one is the dorsal body cavity, guess what the red one is?
The ventral.
Ventral. Is there another name we could give it?
Anterior.
There you go. So that red space is what we call the ventral or the anterior body cavity. Now notice, and again, vocabulary is important. Whoops. Our ventral body cavity, I'll write this here, can be divided anatomically into two spaces.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, someone's not happy.
I know, baby, I know.
I'm going to go ahead and mute everyone. You guys can unmute as needed for that. But all right. So our ventral body cavity can be divided anatomically into two spaces. First, explain to me what I mean by being able to divide anatomically.
Are you referring to the planes?
Oh, that's a good guess. Nope. In this case, we have a big space that is divided into smaller spaces, and it's done anatomically. What do you think that means?
By body systems?
Getting closer there. You've got the right idea. Let's think of it in terms of your house. I would argue, even though I've never seen your house, that your bedroom is probably divided anatomically from the rest of your house. Whereas in all likelihood, you have a kitchen area and you have a dining area, but those are typically not divided anatomically.
So function.
Well, see, but function, so function means, again, function is physiology. We're dividing anatomically.
By section?
Right. There is a physical barrier that separates the ventral body cavity into two spaces. Any idea what that physical barrier might be? What is that physical structure that divides the ventral body cavity into two spaces?
Is it the spine?
No.
Vertebrae? No.
Again, remember, we're talking about the ventral body cavity now.
Oh, the ventral body cavity.
There you go. Sarah's got it.
Diaphragm.
There you go. Diaphragm. Notice if we cheat and look at the pretty picture, lo and behold, we see that the diaphragm, this big, huge bell-shaped curved muscle, anatomically separates the thoracic cavity from the abdominal pelvic cavity, right? Give me a structure that's found in the thoracic cavity.
Lungs.
Lungs.
Lungs. Excellent. Lungs, heart. Should your heart be wandering around in your abdominal pelvic cavity?
No.
No. Should your large intestine be up here, nestled up next to your lungs?
No.
No. We have a physical barrier that separates the thoracic cavity from the abdominal pelvic cavity. All right, so that's what we mean when we say it's divided anatomically. Remember, anatomy is structures. There is a physical structure, and that structure happens to be the diaphragm that divides these two spaces so that they don't connect. Right? Of course, the organs, we know the organs in the dorsal body cavity are the brain and the spinal cord. Here, the collection of squishy gushy things that are found in the ventral body cavity are collectively referred to as viscera, right? Viscera being the noun, fun with vocabulary, or we could refer to them as the visceral organs. And of course, in this case, visceral is the adjective describing the noun, which in this case is the organs. Both of those are fun and exciting ways to describe these things. But these two larger spaces, or if you think about it, notice our ventral body cavity is again a general term, whereas it turns out our thoracic and abdominal pelvic cavities are more intermediate terms, meaning there are smaller, more specific spaces inside of them. We'll start easy by talking about the thoracic cavity. Here we see what view of the body is this here? What plane of section would this be?
Where are you pointing?
The
Oh, I
picture
see.
in the field of view.
Anterior.
This would be what kind of section?
Anterior.
This is an anterior view, but if we were actually cutting through the body with this, what plane of section would this be?
Ventral?
The cephalic?
No, remember, a
Anterior
coronal. This would
or
be a coronal or a
posterior.
frontal section that would give us this view, right? So that would be the coronal, there you go, coronal or frontal section. And notice when we look in this, we can see that our thoracic cavity is divided into 3.5 regions. Maybe an easier way to see this is with this section. What plane of section is this?
Transverse.
Excellent. So this is indeed a transverse section. And poll time. Is this a superior view or an inferior view? If you think it's superior, pick A. If you think it is an inferior view, pick B. And again, notice these polls are anonymous. So I expect everybody to pick an answer.
What were the option? What is A?
A is a superior view, B is an inferior view. I haven't seen this from your standpoint. Can you guys see the rest of the screen when I have the poll up, or is the poll fill up
No.
the screen? Ah.
My poll went away.
I don't know how to bring it back up.
I see
Maybe
the
under
whole thing.
more, you can maybe find it again. All right. Two-thirds of the people have answered the question so far. There we go, getting more and more. It's pretty split, but most people seem to be going towards A, the severe peer review. So excellent. Let's take a look at this and figure it out. We know this is absolutely a transverse section. We figured that out. So let's figure out how the person is oriented. This person would be laying down. Would they be in a prone or a supine position?
Supine.
Excellent, meaning their back would be down and their chest would be up. And for this plane of view, their head is either here in front of you and their feet are through the screen, or the feet are here in front of you and the head is through the screen. So which is it? Is their head behind the screen or in front of the screen? How could we figure that out?
By the side, right or left?
Excellent. So over here is the left lung on the left side of the body. So if I was laying down this way, would this be my left lung over there on that side?
Yes. Oh, wait.
My head
I'm looking
was
at
here.
you. Okay, hold on.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Lay yourself down. If you were laying yourself down like this, would your head be behind the screen or in front of the screen? Behind the screen. Yeah, your head would be behind the screening because, so basically what would happen is I cut you and I tilt you down. And notice in that case, we would be looking at your underside of your torso where we've made this cut. So this is indeed an inferior view. One of the challenges in this class is to get used to looking at the body from different points of view. One of the things you need to be able to do with these types of sections is be able to orient it and figure out what it is that you're looking at. Because one of the challenges in this class is we're going to be looking at the body from ways people are not used to looking at the body. And so being able to orient yourself is a great way that helps you to do that. Awesome. None of which has anything to do with the body cavities we've been talking about, but it is still worthwhile to take a second to talk about that. So let's talk about, now we are in the thoracic cavity, which is our intermediate cavity. And we can see that there are 3.5 specific cavities. The first of these is the left pleural cavity. Notice the left pleural cavity is the space that surrounds the left lung. And guessing if we have a left pleural cavity, guess what we also have?
All right.
There we go. And we also have a right pleural cavity. That surrounds the right lung. And then notice we have this space in between. This space in between, whoops, that didn't work. This space in between is what is known as the mediastinal cavity or the mediastinum. But notice inside of the mediastinal cavity is an additional cavity. And here inside the mediastinum is a small cavity that wraps around the heart. And this additional cavity inside the mediastinum is the pericardial cavity. And guess what's surrounded by the pericardial cavity?
The heart.
There we go, the heart. So that's why I said 3.5, because notice the pericardial cavity is inside the mediastinum. So we have these 3.5, or if you want to think of them as 4 specific cavities found inside of the thoracic cavity. Questions on that? Excellent. And here's the pretty picture, the flow chart from your textbook that shows this as well. And again, remember, this is our intermediate cavity, that is the thoracic cavity. But remember, we also said the abdominal pelvic cavity is an intermediate cavity. It is divided into 2 cavities, but this is not an anatomical division. There is no physical barrier that separates the pelvic cavity from the abdominal pelvic cavity. Yes, we have the bones that help to form the pelvis, which form a bowl that helps to support and contain pelvic organs, but there's no lid on that bowl. There is no physical structure that separates the abdominal cavity from the pelvic cavity. So these are more general terms. And quite frankly, because of that, aren't very useful. So when we talk about the abdominal pelvic cavity, there are some better ways that we can identify the regions and quadrants of the abdominal pelvic cavity. Here, you can see we can draw a vertical line and a horizontal line right through the belly button, and that gives us our 4 quadrants. And as you can see, they have very, very technical names: right upper, left upper, right lower, and left lower. For instance, what quadrant would you expect to find the liver in? Anyone know?
So lower.
Anyone know where you would likely find what
Is it the
quadrant?
LL2?
No, not quite.
That's it.
The right upper
LL2.
quadrant.
There you go, right upper
Oh.
quadrant. Liver is a big, huge organ. It might actually peek a little bit over onto the left, but it is primarily in the right upper quadrant. What about the bladder? What quadrant or quadrants would you find the bladder in?
The lower quadrants.
Excellent. Of course, you wouldn't write that on the exam. On the exam, you'd say the right lower and the left lower quadrants. Excellent. That's an excellent question. Neil, I'll get to that in just a second because that's going to answer the next question. What quadrant would you find the left lung in?
None of the above.
Exactly. Because remember, the abdominal pelvic cavity is bordered by the diaphragm. The diaphragm is the ceiling of the abdominal pelvic cavity, the spaces inside. So to answer your question, the diaphragm is the roof of the quadrants. And you're right, since the left lung is up here in the thoracic cavity, above the diaphragm, it would not be in any of the quadrants. That was a tricky question, but again, this isn't the exam, so I get to ask quick tricky questions when it's not the exam. Quadrants are useful, but it's still only 4s. So we can be a little more precise if we wanted to. By instead of going through the belly button, we could do a tic-tac-toe board. And if we do a tic-tac-toe board, we get the abdominal pelvic regions. Now, one of the things we will run into a lot in this class are these alphabet soup terms. These terms that are made up of a whole bunch of letters. And, oh, I don't think we talked about this during the introduction. In this class, spelling counts. Now, I will give you one letter. So if you're spelling hypochondriac and you spell it, for instance, HYPOCHONDRAC, right? You miss one letter, I will give you that. If you transpose 2 letters, right? So you have the A and the I backwards or something like that, I will give you that. But if you spell it more than that, you will only get partial credit. So you only get half off for something like that. So spelling does matter. Knowing these big alphabet soup terms matter. However, the good news is the alphabet soup terms often tell you exactly what they are. What does hypo mean? Come on, if you have hypothermia or you're hypoglycemic.
It means under.
There you go. Absolutely means under. Anyone know what chondriac refers to? Chondriac refers to the cartilage of the ribs. So guess where the hypochondriac region is?
It's under the ribs.
There you go, below the ribs. Guess where the epigastric region is? What do you think epi refers to? Anyone know what epi means? Upon, excellent, on top of. Gastric refers to the stomach. So epigastric is above the stomach. Guess what hypogastric means?
Under the stomach?
Yeah, under the stomach. Excellent. So often these alphabet soup terms will tell you exactly what they mean. So again, notice on the exam, I can have an arrow pointing right here, ask you to identify this region, ask you to identify an organ that would be found in this region. Or now that we have this in front of us, it should hopefully make the question a lot easier. I could also ask you to identify the quadrant or quadrants that the liver is found within, right? And remember, we saw the liver is kind of like, so what would your answer to that be? Identify the quadrants that the liver is located in.
You would mention all four: the right hypochondric region, right lumbar region, epigastric region, and umbilical region.
Excellent. Those are absolutely 100% the regions that you would likely find the liver in. However, once again, being tricky, I asked for quadrants. What I actually said was quadrants. And again, I make a point of emphasizing this, not to be tricky, not to make someone feel bad, but again, to emphasize the point. Notice you answered a much harder question than I actually asked. You did an amazing job of showing, providing correct information that was 100% correct. But on an exam, even if you show great knowledge, even if that knowledge is 100% correct, but it doesn't answer the question, can I give you full credit for something like that?
No.
No. So again, I will say it before every exam to try to remind you, and I guarantee it's still going to happen, but I will still continue to say it. People often lose points, not because they don't know the information, but because they don't read the questions carefully. Please read the questions carefully so you can answer them correctly. But you're absolutely correct. If I instead had asked for the regions, then you gave me 100% the correct answer. Now notice also the way I've drawn it, the way your textbook has drawn it here. Notice the liver does sneak a little bit into the umbilical region. Does it sneak into the umbilical region for everybody? Probably not, right? So there can be some variation in that. However, is the liver ever going to be over here in the left, lumbar region, or down here in the hypogastric region?
No.
It shouldn't be.
No, exactly not. So while there is going to be some individual variations, those variations aren't going to be that huge, right? So again, notice in this case, the large intestine is way down here. For some people, is it possible that the large intestine can come up here into the epigastric region? Yes. But again, so there's going to be some individual variation, but again, it's not going to be crazy. But there can be some fluff on that kind of stuff. All right. Questions on that? I like this picture for one other reason as well. Notice it shows all these squishy organs that are in our ventral body cavity, our anterior body cavity. And remember, we refer to these as the visceral organs. Well, not just the visceral organs, but all of the organs of our body need protection, right? We're not like a big bucket where you dump these things inside of them. We need protection. So all of these internal organs are going to be covered by protective membranes. In our dorsal body cavity, our brain and spinal cord, these have a very special protective layer known as the meninges. The meninges is actually made up of 3 different layers of connective tissues. It's a very elaborate structure. So we will wait till we get to the nervous system before we talk about the meninges. However, almost everything in the ventral body cavity is instead surrounded by a special membrane known as a serous membrane. Serous membranes have a couple things that are very important about them. The first thing is that they are double membranes. And these double membranes are connected. Let's see how this would work. Here's our whiteboard. Let's say, for instance, I had a balloon that was only partially filled out. And I decided to take my fist and shove it into that balloon. When I did that, and let's change the picture here a little bit. Here's my fist. When I shoved my hand into that balloon, some of the balloon would collapse down along the surface of my hand. But would the entire balloon collapse on my hand?
No.
No, because there's air inside of it. Because there's this little bit of air inside of it, some of the air would billow out, and so some of the balloon would form a space around my hand. Notice this is what we call a double membrane. With this double membrane, some of the membrane is in contact with my hand. And some either forms the cavity or lines the cavity. And when we have these types of things, notice if I were to take a little piece of this balloon, if I were to use my scissors and cut a teeny piece of the balloon right here, and cut a teeny piece of the balloon right here, and look at them under the microscope, would they look the same or would they look different?
The same.
They're exactly the same. It's the same membrane. So notice the only real difference here is their location. The only real difference is the location. But anatomists love to name everything. So even though these two membranes are identical to each other, they're in different locations, so we're going to give them different names. The part of it that is in direct contact with my hand, this part right here, they're going to refer to as the visceral layer. And the part of it that forms the space or lines the cavity, they're going to refer to as the parietal layer. And this doesn't just work for balloons and hands. Let's talk about the heart, right? Again, as you've seen, I'm an amazing artist. So this is a 100% accurate representation of what your heart looks like. And there is a serous membrane that wraps around the heart. That serous membrane that wraps around the heart lines the surface of the heart, but also comes out to form a cavity around the heart. Now, again, this is a serous membrane. And it's around the heart, and it's a double membrane. So of course, the layer that is in direct contact with the heart, how would we identify that?
The visceral layer.
Excellent. And the part that is forming the cavity?
Parietal layer.
The parietal.
Excellent. And we have a space in between. Now with our balloon, that space is filled with air. Is this space filled with air?
No.
What does it have inside of it?
Like
Not blood, not tissue.
ventricles.
Well, but again, remember, this is outside the heart. So this is a space around the heart. And as it turns out, this space is lined with fluid.
Yeah, serous fluid.
Exactly. It's a serous membrane, so not surprisingly, it is lined with serous fluid. Our goal is not to fill it with serous fluid, but we want a thin layer. And what is the function of that thin layer of serous fluid? Why do we have serous fluid around the heart? Some of it is for cushioning, but even more important than cushioning.
Protection.
Protect it.
Protection from what?
Any force or?
It's not that strong. That's what the ribs are for, right? Protected from force.
Oh yeah.
What is it protected from? What happens when you rub your hands together?
Heat.
Friction.
Right, friction, and it gets hot. What if you spit on your hands first and then rub them together? Do they get as hot as fast?
No, it's lubricated.
Right,
The
because you
temperature?
have, exactly, you have serous fluid in your saliva. So what it does is it makes it a slippery surface, which protects it from friction. Because your heart should be beating constantly, every day, all day. It doesn't get to have Sundays off or every other Tuesday or anything like that. And so we want to reduce that friction. So we have a thin layer of serous fluid, reducing that friction, providing that protection inside this space. All right, you with me so far?
1 second.
So notice our serous membranes are a double membrane with a visceral layer and a parietal layer, but because again, our anatomists love to name things. All serous membranes are named by the organs and the cavities associated with them. Again, this is just a name by location. This is my orange highlighter. Is this the only orange highlighter in the whole entire world?
No.
No, but this is the one that happens to be in my desk. It's got my teeth marks on it. Because of its location, it's Dr. Slutsky's highlighter. We give it a name based on its location. And the same thing here. All of these serous membranes associated with the heart, guess what we call this, the serous membranes associated with the heart? You might be able to
Can you
figure
ask that
out.
question one more time?
How do we identify all these serous membranes and this serous cavity associated with the heart? There we go. Pericardial or pericardium. So notice this layer on the heart is actually the visceral pericardium. The one that's forming the cavity is the parietal pericardium. And the space is the pericardial cavity. So notice all of these are named based on their location, whether they're on the organ or forming the cavity and which organ they're associated with. A serous membrane associated with the heart is the pericardium. Anyone know the serous membrane associated with the lungs? Pleura, excellent. And then any organ in the abdominal pelvic cavity There you go. We refer to it as a peritoneum. So notice if instead, and I'll draw it small up here, I had a stomach, there is going to be a serous membrane that is going to line the surface of the stomach, and that would be the visceral peritoneum. There's going to be one that lines the cavity of the abdominal pelvic cavity. That would be the parietal peritoneum, and the space would be the peritoneal cavity. We actually saw this. We didn't emphasize it at the time, but we did actually see this. So again, here's my example of the heart and the fist. Here we have the pretty pictures talking about the pleura, the pericardium, but let's come back to our thoracic cavity, the transverse section to the thoracic cavity. Notice now that we have some understanding of what we're looking for, we can see that this layer right here is the visceral pericardium. This would be the parietal pericardium. Notice this would be the right visceral pleura, and this would be the right parietal pleura. And notice they connect. It's a double membrane. And the same thing on the left. Left visceral pleura, left parietal pleura. And notice also when I talk about the pleural membranes, there are a left and a right. They're separate from each other. You may not have thought of it in these terms, but you're absolutely positively aware of them. Because again, now that the world is starting to open up, everybody's getting the opportunity to go out in bars, and they're having a little bit too much fun, getting a little bit too loose, getting a little bit too much wild. So there you are sitting at the bar and then striking up a conversation with the person next to you. And of course, like most conversations at bars, end up eventually talking about who's the cutest member of BTS. Now, everybody, of course, knows it's Jimin, and anybody that says otherwise, those are fighting words. One thing leads to another. Suddenly you get a knife in the ribs. And as you get that knife in your ribs, your right lung collapses. Fluid and blood gets into this space. And as that fluid and blood gets into this space, your lung collapses. Do you die as a result of that?
Probably.
No.
Well, if it was extreme enough, possibly, but you can. But because your left lung is shrink wrapped separately, even if your right lung collapses, unless there's massive amounts of blood crossing the mediastinum over to the left side, your left lung will stay inflated long enough so that you can breathe till you get to the emergency room.
I have a quick question. Do
Yes.
all serous membranes have serous fluid?
Yes.
Okay.
Do your lungs need to be able to reduce their friction, maintain that cohesion? Does your stomach and your small intestine need to be able to churn around inside of your stomach? Yeah, absolutely. So again, that's one of the reasons they're called serous membranes, is because they produce serous fluid. Absolutely. Great question. Any others? So there you go. We have our 3 specific serous membranes based on the location. And remember, for all of these, there is a visceral and a parietal layer. So there's a visceral pericardium, parietal pericardium, visceral peritoneum, parietal peritoneum. And for our pleuras, not only do we have visceral and parietal, but we also have left and right. So if I had this previous picture on the exam, actually, let's just use this picture. This isn't good enough. If I had an arrow pointing right there and asked you, let's use a different color. Asked you to identify that membrane, what would your answer to that be? Identify that specific membrane.
Be the serous membrane?
Okay, but I said specific. So if I said general membrane, then absolutely serous would be acceptable. But when I said specific, I want you to be as precise as you can be. So what would the specific membrane be?
Would be the periatal pericardium.
Excellent. So
The left one.
there we go. So notice it would be left parietal pericardium.
Yes.
Pleura.
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 There you go. It's on the left side. It's lining the cavity around the lungs. Left parietal pleura. See how the game's played?
Would the lung be like stating that it's the left one, because right now in the picture you don't have left or right? So would we assume that's automatically the left?
But what do we, when we look at the body, what are we always supposed to assume?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Anatomical position, absolutely. Right. And I think they show us enough of the surrounding body to tell that this, we're looking at somebody from straight on. Obviously down here, this picture would be better, but yes, you have the right idea. So if instead we went back to this picture, I would either have to tell you which is the right lung or the left lung, or what I could do instead is I could tell you that this was a superior view. And if I said this was a superior view, and then I had this arrow right here, and I asked you to identify that specific membrane, what would your answer be?
The left.
The left pleura plural.
Okay, left visceral pleura. Exactly. Yep.
Oh, visceral.
Visceral, because
oh yeah, it's specifically on the okay.
Yep. On the there you go. Excellent. Right, but see, that's why we do this now, is so that it makes sense as we move forward. All right, excellent. Ugh. All right. Let's talk about this next class. What I want to do with the few minutes that remain is I want to quickly talk about, so we'll come back and talk about distribution of water in the body in the next class. But what I want to finish up is I want to do a quick organ system overview. We mentioned when we were doing our hierarchy that indeed there are 11 organ systems. So identify those 11 organ systems for me. Somebody give me one of the names of one of the organ systems.
So molecules.
Not the hierarchy.
Smallest.
I want the organ systems. What are the organ systems found in our body? Give me an example of an organ system.
The skeletal system.
Integumentary. I heard skeletal. I see nervous.
Lymphatic.
Lymphatic.
Respiratory.
Respiratory.
Endocrine.
Cardiovascular. I'm sorry, what was that one?
The endocrine system.
Endocrine. I saw reproductive. I see someone wrote muscular. We missing any?
Respiratory. Oh no, that's on there. Never mind.
Isn't it the circulatory?
Digestive.
Circulatory system is part of the cardiovascular system. There we go. Brooks got it. Urinary.
What about digestive?
Oh yeah. What did we? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, you're right. We're missing 2. Digestive and urinary. Excellent. Perfect. Now we got them all. So what I want to do with the little bit of time we have remaining is I would like to go through and identify major organs and major function of these systems. So let's start first with the integumentary system. What is the major organ of the integumentary system? Yeah, the skin. Excellent. A couple of people already did that. Absolutely. And what is its function? What does our integumentary system do for us?
Protect.
Yeah, it protects what?
Our organs.
Absolutely. From what?
Outside environment.
I like that. External forces. Yeah, it forms a barrier between us and the outside world. Right. So again, harmful chemicals, mechanical stressors, water loss and gain. Right. How many people here have ever washed the dishes before?
Unfortunately.
Okay, a couple of you. Excellent. When you take that sponge and you dip it into the sink, what happens to it?
Fills up.
Yeah, it expands and fills up. How many people here have taken a bath before?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, a couple people. Excellent. For those of you who haven't, I highly recommend it. When you got into that bathtub, did you blow up like that sponge, absorbing all that water?
No.
No, because your skin provides that mostly waterproof barrier, helping to keep things in and out. Now, is it an impenetrable barrier?
No.
No, some things can get in, some things can get out, but it helps to regulate what gets in and out of our body, and it forms that boundary. Excellent. What's the function of the skeletal system?
Protects our organs.
Structure.
Okay, structure, protection, absolutely, movement. Those are the three big ones, absolutely. And I like that you guys didn't say protection first, because how many bones do I have in my hand?
A lot.
A lot, absolutely. We have a lot. We'll worry about how many later, but a lot works for now. Are any of them providing protection?
No.
No. They give our hand structure. They give it they provide the levers for the movement. And do we have organs in the skeletal system?
No. Oh wait.
No organs? What's an organ system? Shouldn't it have to have organs?
Yeah.
So what would the organs be?
Bones.
Bones, exactly. How many do you have?
A lot.
A lot. Although, anybody know the number?
I forget.
200 and something. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
There you go. 200 and something named bones. Excellent. That's good. Now, as you guys mentioned, it is the levers for the movement, but does this bones actually provide the movement?
No.
No. What provides the movement? Muscular system. Absolutely. Muscular system. Yeah. 206 named bones. And you will learn all 206 named bones. Anyone know how many named muscles you have? Not as comfortable with that one. Over 600. You have over 600 named muscles. Now, you do need to learn all 206 named skeletal bones, but you're not going to have to learn all 600 muscles. Only about 530. So it won't be too bad at all. All right. I'm just kidding. 475. But that muscular system is what provides that movement, moves us through space, generates that heat that when we get cold, and does all of those. Absolutely. Well, no, 600 skeletal muscles. We'll talk muscle tissue. You're right. There are 3 types of muscle tissue, but we'll talk about all that when we get to the muscular system. You got the right idea. Let's jump back over here to the nervous system. What is the function of the nervous system?
A response, like reflexes and
I like that. Our nervous system allows us to respond to our environment. Absolutely. And there's a special word we can use: send information, receive information, process that information. Our nervous system is specialized for communication. How does it communicate? True, the neurons are the cells that produce it, but what do the neurons actually do that allows it to communicate to other cells? Produces signals. Anyone know what kind of signals?
Electric signals.
Yeah, it produces electrical signals, what we call action potentials, allowing us to fast and rapidly receive responses. So like I said, you put your hand on something hot and you pull it away before you're even aware of the fact that you should be cursing. It allows for that rapid communication. And of course, what are some of the organs in our nervous system?
Nerves.
Nerves, brain, spinal cord, absolutely. Now, there is another organ system on this list that is specialized for communication. What is it?
Endocrine?
Endocrine. The endocrine system is also specialized for communication. However, how does our endocrine system communicate? Chemical signals, excellent. And those chemical signals are called hormones, right? Hormones are slower signals used for communication, but they can be very, very powerful. They can be sustained for weeks, months, years, right? If I put my hand on something hot, I wouldn't want the cells producing a chemical signal, releasing that chemical signal into the blood, have it circulating in my body till it gets to my brain, where my brain then makes a chemical signal, puts it into the blood, circulates in the body till it gets back to my hand to tell my hand to move. My hand would be burnt off by the time that that happened. But how many of you are the same size now as you were when you were born?
No one.
Yeah, hopefully for your moms, not too many of you, absolutely. So those years of process of developing and growing, going from from girl type people into women and boy type people into men, that development, that growth, that maturation, right? The production of secondary sexual characteristics, all of those things are controlled by these long lasting chemical signals. Excellent. All right. Give me some organs in the endocrine system. Thyroid gland's a good one. Excellent.
Pancreas.
Adrenal gland, pancreas, excellent. Producing that insulin, producing that that adrenaline for stress. Absolutely excellent. Those are all good examples. What's our lymphatic system do?
Immunity?
So it is indefinitely involved in our immune response. Absolutely. Notice I said immune response. I did not say an immune system. If you could see me right now, I would be standing on top of my soapbox and you would hear me say to you, there is no such thing as an immune system. Systems, as we've talked about, are comprised of organs working together for some function. Your immune response is vitally important for protecting you from harmful things in the outside world, but it is comprised of cellular and chemical interactions that take place in the body. So it is an immune response, not an immune system. However, many of the cells involved in our immune response are housed in lymphatic organs, like your appendix, like your tonsils, like your spleen and things along those lines. So absolutely, they play a vital role in our body defenses. And as Neil pointed out, it also plays an important role in fluid transportation. What else is responsible here for transportation?
Digestive system?
True, digestive system is also involved in transportation. What else?
The cardiovascular?
Cardiovascular, absolutely. Remember we were talking earlier, if I cut my hand off, it's not going to be able to run away and lead a happy life. The reason for that is the cells of my hand have become specialized for a specific job. They can no longer do all the things they need to do to be alive, like get the gases they need from the outside world, like getting their own nutrients, like getting their own chemical signals. And luckily, our cardiovascular system is then able to bring and provide those cells with everything they need to stay alive so they can do their special jobs. It's vitally important. And of course, all of this stuff, the majority of the stuff that is transported by what in the cardiovascular system?
Blood.
Oh, the
Absolutely, transported by the blood, absolutely. Right. Arteries and veins, the hearts, all of those organs take the things where we need them to go. But it turns out our blood vessels, particularly our capillaries, are a little bit leaky. And so excess fluid sneaks out. Do we constantly want excess fluid sneaking out of our blood vessels? No. One of the problems is that we would decrease the amount of blood we had for transportation, which would be a major issue. But what's the other problem when we get accumulation of fluid in an area? What do we call that? Swelling, or we have a fancy technical term for it. What do we call that fancy edema? Absolutely. Edema can be very, very troubling, right? Your joints get very, very tight, right? It gets harder to get that wedding ring off when you get to the bar at the end of the day, right? There's some major issues that come along with that edema, and we don't want that edema to happen. So what our lymphatic system does is it's able to collect that extra fluid and deposit it back into the cardiovascular system. And does it do it blind? It just closes its eyes, grabs it, and dumps it in? No, that's when it's examining it. It's looking at that fluid for any harmful things. Are there any pathogens in here? Any cancerous cells? Anything dangerous or damaging? Nope. Okay, I can put that into the cardiovascular system. And if it does find something bad, then it can do something about it. It can trigger that immune response. Of course, I mentioned things like the spleen, the tonsils. What's another big organ in the lymphatic system? The most obvious one.
Lymph nodes.
There you go, the lymph nodes, absolutely. That's where a lot of that processing takes place. All right, respiratory system, function.
Breathing.
True, but the mechanical movement of air in and out. But why do we mechanically move air in and out of our lungs?
Just overall gas exchange.
Exactly, gas exchange. And we talk about gas exchange. Which gases in particular are we primarily involved in?
Oxygen and carbon dioxide.
Excellent. Oxygen and carbon dioxide. I know most people think of oxygen, but they forget about the carbon dioxide. But carbon dioxide is equally important, and in some cases more important. All right, I'm sure many of you have kids, and one of the things you had to deal with this morning is, right, when kids don't get their way, what do? I don't want to go to school. What do? It's true, they scream, that's one thing. Or what's the other thing they can do till they get their way?
Cry.
Cry or hold their breath. I don't want to go to school. I'm going to hold my breath till I die. Do they hold their breath till they die?
That can't last
long.
No, eventually they're going to breathe, and then their wives go on, you have to teach, get out of here. And so then you end up being here and lecture. Absolutely. So again, can you hold your breath forever? No. What causes you to breathe? Is it that you run out of oxygen? No, it's actually what causes you to breathe is that you actually build up too much CO2. Carbon dioxide, as it turns out, plays a much bigger role in regulating your rate of breathing than oxygen does. What are the organs in the respiratory system?
Lungs, trachea, your
Lungs,
nostril,
trachea,
your nasal
nostrils,
cavity.
Nasal cavity. Mouth?
Yeah.
Okay, your mouth is,
Esophagus.
it is possible to get air from your mouth into your lungs. However, by the same token, if I put a straw up my nose, is it actually possible to get milk into my stomach?
No.
Yes. You can actually get milk into your stomach through your nose. Does that mean your nose is part of the digestive system?
No, it's not.
No. And it's the same thing with the respiratory system. The mouth is not a part of the respiratory system. Yes, anybody who's ever had a cold survived that cold because they were able to get air moving through their mouth into their lungs, but it is not actually considered a part of the respiratory system, the same way that the nose is not a part of the digestive system. Right? The reason for that is the respiratory system is not just responsible for gas exchange, but it's also responsible for processing the air. Your nasal cavity is specialized for processing that air, and your oral cavity is not. So, what is the function of the digestive system?
It's to process and obtain nutrients.
I like that. Excellent. You have that nice big cheeseburger for breakfast, and your digestive system's responsible for breaking it down from something that looks like a cheeseburger to something that looks basically like sludge. And once we've broken it down both mechanically and chemically, we need to absorb those nutrients into our body. Basically, our digestive system is a hollow tube from our mouth to our anus, and then all of the accessory organs that help us to process that food and get it into our body. Excellent. We're rapidly close to the end of this, but luckily we just have two more. Reproductive system. What is the function of the reproductive system?
Reproduce.
To reproduce. Yes, the building is tall because it is tall.
Offspring.
Yeah, there you go. To produce offspring. Absolutely. Right. So absolutely, your reproductive organ is reproductive system, I should say, is responsible for producing offspring, making other people. What are the primary organs of the reproductive system?
Uterus, penis, ovaries, testes.
Okay, excellent. Right. Again, this is an anatomy and physiology class. Absolutely, you're allowed to say penis and vagina in it. However, you listed a lot of them. Of all of those, which are the most important?
Ovaries and testicles.
There you go. Absolutely. The ovaries and the testicles, or what collectively, what's the generic term we would use for them collectively?
Gonads.
There you go. The gonads. Absolutely. The gonads are where, as we explained it to my daughter when she was little, where we make the puzzle pieces. Mommy and daddy make puzzle pieces, put those puzzle pieces together, and lo and behold, we had her. Yes, the vagina and the penis are copulatory organs, right, for helping to put those two things together. The uterus, as you mentioned, is where we're going to house those puzzle pieces once we put them together to have the offspring. But the gonads are responsible for actually producing the gametes, the eggs and the sperm that are what allow us to produce more individuals. And those gonads do one other important function as well. What else do those gonads do for us? You can get $10,000 for having a video of someone getting kicked in them in the on America's Funniest Home Video.
And signal?
Yeah, exactly. They produce hormones, right? Our reproductive hormones, the ones that turn, like I said, turn boy type people into men type people, to turn girl type people into women type people, causing that sexual maturation that allows us to tell the difference between someone who is capable of producing an offspring and is not biologically capable of producing an offspring. Excellent. And that leaves us with our last organ system, which is good because we've got a minute left. So the worst named of all the possible organ systems, what is the function of the urinary system?
It get rid of toxins.
Blood.
Exactly. Perfect. Absolutely. The goal of the urinary system is to remove toxins from the blood. Absolutely. Vitally, vitally important process. How long could you survive with just one kidney? How long could you survive with just one kidney?
For a long time.
Yeah, forever. You have an extra, right? Sell it on eBay, right? You've got an extra kidney. However, you guys have the right idea. If you lost both kidneys, how long could you survive with no kidneys?
Not long.
Not very long, like you guys talked about. Hours, maybe days. Yes, as someone pointed out, dialysis is a short-term stopgap, but it's not a long-term solution. That filtering of your blood is such a vital process that we cannot survive long without it. Yes, as a result of it, those wastes are put into water and released from the body in the form of urine. But the important part isn't the urine that you're making. The important part is what's going on in your blood, that filtering of your blood. Now, of course, what your body is releasing is important, because if there's something wrong with you, what's the first thing the doctor does? Takes a blood test and has you pee in a cup so that they can see what's going on. And again, this has been since medieval times. Medieval times, if you had a baby that was very, very colicky, crying all the time, one of the things the doctor would do was taste the urine. That's one of the reasons why the doctors make so much money. Why would the doctor taste the urine?
To see if there was blood in it.
Although, could you really tell blood from taste?
Does the pH level have anything to do with it? Like
There you go.
acidic?
Crystal's
alkaline?
got it. Crystal's got it.
Oh.
Sweetness. They're looking for sweetness. If the urine is very sweet, what does that tell us?
There's probably something that shouldn't be in there.
True. And something. There we go. Crystal's got it. Diabetic.
Glucose.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Someone who has uncontrolled diabetes has too much glucose in their blood, so much so that it's being released in our urine. And so it's an indication of diabetes, which again, infant onset diabetes or type 1 diabetes can be a dangerous condition. Excellent. And of course, just to finish it off, what are the organs of the urinary system? Bladder, kidneys, there you go, urethra. Excellent. All right, again, your book has a nice table that talks about all of these. So you can take a look at that. Make sure you know the organs and organ systems and the general function of them. All right. Excellent. That is, I apologize for going a couple minutes late. That will not normally be the case, but you guys had some amazing questions and that was really, really good. Yes, Augustina, you had a question?
So are the quizzes that we have next class, are they always based off of the last lecture?
Typically they will be, although I do expect you to go ahead. So in general, here's the way it'll work. When we have a daily quiz, it'll either be specific information that we have covered or much more general overview type of information on the stuff we're going to talk about.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Excellent. Any other questions?
Can I come in for your office hour also tomorrow for the extra credit?
Yes, if you do not have time after class today, then you are welcome to come to any of my office hours. Tuesday, I'll be there probably from 10:30 to 11:30. I'm going to leave a little early to be there early, like I was there early today for your class. But that class starts at noon, so I'll be there. But I will be there before normal time. So especially 10:30 to 11, since the other class won't know about that. That would be a perfect time to come in, or go to my office hours today if you have time to do that. Augustina, you have another question?
Yeah, sorry, one more question.
Yeah.
If we're still on the wait list, should we schedule the 5-on-5 meeting still?
Yes, because if you're able to add the class, you want to get those points. So I highly recommend that you do that.
Okay.
Excellent. Was there another question? I thought there was another hand, but it appears to have disappeared. Yes, Sarah.
Yeah, I had a quick question on the syllabus.
Yes.
So when you have the assignment set up, so like next Monday, we have a couple things on the list. Are all those things on the list for next Monday like due on Monday?
Yes.
Or are those what we're doing for that week?
No, they're due on those days and they're due at the beginning of class.
Okay, so have everything done before then. Okay.
Correct. Yes. So like you said, next Monday, your Unit 1 review needs to be turned in online before class begins on Monday. That is correct.
Okay.
All right. Great. Excellent. Any other questions? All right. Like I said, Violet, yes.
What are your office hours today?
So I will be, my office hours are 12:35 to about 1:35. So as soon as I close this window to start compiling the video, I will go over to my Zoom office. And normally it's for an hour, but again, if we have a lot of people who are trying to do 5 for 5s, then I will stay for anybody who's there. I'll have a weight room set up, so it'll be like, I'll do it in the order of people as they show up. But yes, come and we'll do what I can.
Okay.
All right. Batu?
Yes, when will you send us our the number to add the class?
After office hours. So after I'm done with the 5 for 5s, I will, again, you send me the email with your student ID, and then I will send you the number back.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Mhm.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Excellent. Then you guys have a great day, and I will see you guys on Wednesday.